How I wished I didn't go to work today, Adam Pavel lamented as he watched helplessly while the hellish bloodbath continued to unfold on the screens of the condominium surveillance security room. He had seen plenty of videos of gruesome Adumbrae attacks on the internet, but it was another thing to watch them on the screen knowing you were in the same building as them. Their security cameras captured the scenes of a number of their residents turning into monsters, the monsters in turn devouring those still human. Some of them were even combining and merging to birth even more abominable creatures. And he couldn't do anything except to stay and watch, bound to his seat by hardened plaster. His head was also held in place, glued to the chair's headrest, forced to face forward at the panel of screens. Even the luxury of being able to scream and call for help was denied him by the patch of the same plaster covering his mouth. But I could say I am the lucky one. Adam tried to turn his head to the seat beside him where Brummer, his partner, sat. He couldn't, the plaster holding firm. He strained his eyes to look as far left as he could. In his peripheral vision, his partner's body wasn't moving. Brummer's really dead. What did he expect? It had been more than 5 minutes since the terrorist Adumbrae covered Brummer's entire face with plaster because he was yelling profanities, trying to get a rise out of him. And it had been a couple minutes since Brummer stopped struggling, no doubt dying from suffocation. Call me a coward if you want, but after his partner died, Adam didn't entertain any thought of attempting to escape. He couldn't even if he wanted to, or antagonizing in any way the terrorist who took control of the surveillance room of the condominium. Brummer was new. Adam has worked with him for only 3 months, so there wasn't much in the way of camaraderie between them, yet he felt guilty to be relieved that he was the one who survived. He wasn't religious in any way, but he prayed to whatever God that would listen to him to forgive his selfish thoughts. Gods might not be real, but demons were. I'm back. You guys really got some messy cabinets. Here was one of the demons. A terrorist, was what he'd call him. And he seemed to be an Adumbrae given the powers he displayed. For what vile person would think about turning humans into monsters? He was sure that was what they were doing, for it was unthinkable that a large number of people in the same building spontaneously became Adumbrae at the same time. It was more likely there was an Adumbrae who could turn people into monsters. What were their aims? He didn't know. It was enough that they were spreading death, destruction, and terror. They are Adumbrae, that was their nature. Adam's hunch was that these demons were the reason of the massive explosion that caused dozens of deaths last Saturday. The group the bid was fighting. They weren't some run-of-the-mill syndicate smuggling illegal Adumbrae body parts as what the news wanted the people to believe. They were an Adumbrae terrorist organization. What shitty luck he had they chose to attack this building. Did I miss anything? The man said. Adam grunted as he struggled to make an acceptable response even if his mouth was covered. He wanted to placate the terrorist so he wouldn't get killed. Or worse, turned into a monster too. The man who spoke took the empty seat to his right, almost jumping on it. He lazily placed his feet on the console, flecks of dust from the soles of his boots showered the keyboards. He opened the bag of cheesy blitz he got from one of the cabinets, grabbed a large handful of the chips, and stuffed them in his mouth. Adam couldn't see the expression of the terrorist watching people getting killed by monsters because he was leaning back in his chair, but he could hear the nonchalant crunch of the chips. You guys are cool. Really cool, he excitedly said. You have snacks stashed here. Adam tried to nod as much as the plaster around his head would allow him and made sounds of agreement. Need to have snacks while we watch this awesome show. More sounds of munching. How could all of this have happened? It was all a blur, as if everything was a nightmare. Yet it was all real. Why tonight? Why here? Why him? Adam closed his eyes to the horrors that was happening in front of him, thinking back at everything that happened since he entered the building for his shift. If he could have seen it coming, if he could have done anything to prevent it, if he could have escaped beforehand, only if. He had eaten an early dinner, a large tuna salad wrap from Salad to Go as I always did before his shift, and was hanging out at Johnson's desk as I always did before going up, listening to him blabber on about a hot blonde woman that he saw. It was like every other night until people carrying various equipment entered the building. Krista told them there was nothing to worry about as the management informed her they were supposedly upgrading the security system. Why didn't I sense there was something wrong that time? He was watching those people on the screens of the security room as they installed cameras and God knows what else all over the building, and he didn't think there was anything fishy. Some of them even entered the security room and tinkered with the computers. And he just sat back and let it all happen. He was even the one who informed all the other guards that tech people were coming in to do some work. He also recalled that Gilbert and the guys from the prior shift mentioned to him that the new cleaning personnel were doing bizarre things such as placing various canisters in the vents and piping, but they reasoned it must be fumigation or some shit and didn't do anything about it. It didn't ring any alarm bells in his head back then. No one told them beforehand about this system upgrade. What was worse was that he didn't think there was anything wrong that they were doing the installation at night. After Krista told them that the management ordered it, he didn't give it any more thought. Adam was just ready to spend the long night watching the NBA games he saved on his phone as I always did. He had become too complacent. He even waved away Brummer's complaints. The kid was the only one talking sense but he didn't listen. It was too late now. Too late. Yow. The terrorist kicked his chair and he fell over. Why are your eyes closed? I told you to watch this. He pulled Adam's chair back upright. Sorry for that. His temper and tone changing so abruptly that it was unsettling. He patted Adam's head. I got too excited because this is a once-in-a-lifetime experience, the man said. Adam knew what the man was implying, so he opened his eyes and went back to watching as more and more people were getting killed. Here. This. Watch this one. The man pulled Adam's chair closer to him and angled it so he can see what the man was pointing to. This is a scene worth getting snacks for. It was the mysterious silver metallic man, or maybe woman since it had a more feminine shape, but he couldn't really tell. It looked like one of those metal human sculptures from those fancy modern art galleries, the ones that looked like highly stylized dummies, and it had red symbols painted on various places of its body. At first, he thought it was just another one of the monsters made by the terrorist Adumbrae, or even an actual Adumbrae, but based from the terrorists' reaction, it didn't appear to be the case. This metal man wasn't part of their organization. But it was also making its own monsters. From what Adam could pick up from the ramblings of the terrorist, they were observing one of the residents of the condominium, a certain Erin Hartwell. This man beside him was ranting about losing her earlier, and then he was elated when she returned. He wasn't certain, but Johnson had also mentioned something about Erin earlier when he was chatting with him. Wasn't she the friend of the hot blonde he was raving about? He was sure the terrorists were waiting for someone to show up that was connected to Erin. Then this metal man was spotted near Erin's room. However, it turned out this wasn't the person the terrorists were looking for. The terrorist who bound him was extremely surprised at the appearance of this strange new entity. Holy cow! He just ripped that guy in half, the terrorist said, clapping his cheese powder-crusted hands while the monster the metal man made tore up another monster that looked like a giant mouth. Adam was sure the hulking reddish mutant brute protecting the metal man was formerly one of their residents, Mr. Caesar Pintor, a financials guy with a loving family. Where was his wife and daughter? Did the metal man kill them both before enslaving the father of their family? Or it may even be that Mr. Pintor was turned into a monster and killed his own wife and child. Both of them watched as the metal man and its slave monster tore through the 22nd floor, fighting the other residents that also turned into monsters. They wove in and out of the camera's view, fighting inside rooms, fighting in the hallway, ripping flesh and walls just the same. Adam predicted the metal man was trying to clear a way to the elevators. Residents, awoken by the commotion, either fled or were forced out of their rooms, several of them dying as they got caught in the melee. The ones who escaped the rampage of the monster Mr. Pintor ran into other monsters and were promptly eaten. Unable to take the gut-wrenching violence, He stole a look at the other screens since the terrorist was still engrossed in watching the metal man. It appeared that the fierce battle on the 22nd floor attracted monsters from other levels. A skeletal centaur with a scorpion tail and scythes for arms galloped up the stairs from the 17th floor, seemingly headed to the fighting. In its haste, it crashed into a headless willowy ghoul that was dragging a pack of corpses connected to it with heavy rusty chains up the stairs. The centaur and the headless ghoul faced off while another creature with too many spindly limbs climbed on the ceiling to avoid them, hitting the security camera and knocking it down. Another screen showed a large worm that burst into the 23rd floor, chewing through the floors of the upper levels. It started to dig its way to the 22nd floor. Through the hole it made followed a few zombies that fell through it. He must be losing his mind because he found himself mesmerized by the otherworldly scene. If a man found himself in hell with no escape, what else to do but gaze upon the horrors it brought? "What is it doing this time?" the terrorist said. He elbowed Adam, who jerked in surprise, to get his attention. "Man, look at this. What do you think of this?" Adam turned his attention back to the screen displaying the metal man, nervously grunting an apology. The former Mr. Pintor was holding back the new onslaught of monsters, looking worse for wear with one of his arms nearly severed and several deep gashes on his body, while the metal man was behind it pointing at a couple of cowering residents, a husband and wife by the looks of it. They were familiar faces. Adam recalled they often rented the conference rooms of the condominium for their business seminars, but their names escaped him. The husband shielded his wife and, by the looks of his gestures, was offering himself to the metal man. The metal man pointed at the husband with a finger of its left hand. And then the man began to bleed and convulse in his wife's arms. "It's healing that other guy," observed the terrorist. "Wait, no. It's not healing." Who did he mean by other guy? The monster? Adam looked more closely, somehow interested. Noticing it, the terrorist pushed him closer to the screen. He was right, the monster protecting the metal man was getting healed. "See? Weird, huh?" said the terrorist. "It's like it's transferring the injuries from that guy to this guy. Looks like he's dead," he said, referring to the husband. The hell? With proof before his eyes of the absence of God, Adam still prayed fruitlessly that the metal man would leave the woman alone after killing her husband. But the metal didn't move away. It approached her, raising its arm to strike her as she grieved for her dead husband. "No," Adam thought. As if hearing him, the metal man stopped and then walked away. To Adam's surprise, the woman stood up and followed the metal man without any resistance. With its monster good as new, or even stronger and fiercer than before, the metal man continued the push through the hordes of monsters blocking the way to the elevator. They made impressive speed, reaching the stairs beside the elevators. "Look out," the terrorist said. From the stairs came charging the skeleton centaur, hacking the other monsters in its path. The metal man noticed and ran back down the corridor. The centaur followed it, flailing its arms, nearly slicing the head of the wife that was standing nearby in a daze. Its eyes were dead set on the metal man, ignoring the woman. The metal man slipped and fell on the floor. The centaur tried to slam the metal man with its hooves, but missed. Before the metal man could stand, the centaur followed up its attack with slashing blades. The metal tried to fight it off, but was helpless as the centaur monster used its blade arms to hack its body into pieces. Or not exactly. The metal body was dismantled at the joints, but the centaur couldn't cut the individual parts no matter how hard it tried. The terrorist laughed. "It's like a doll." The Mr. Pintor monster rushed to the metal man's aid, diving at the skeleton centaur, crushing its bones. In this chaos, the woman following the metal man presumably had a moment of clarity and fled down the stairs. Adam tried to shout, "Don't go down." But he only managed a pathetic whining sound. The other screens showed the horrors awaiting her at the lower floors. He closed his eyes. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be happening. He kept repeating it to himself until he remembered that the terrorist might get angry at him for closing his eyes again. He hastily opened his eyes, but the terrorist didn't notice as he was distracted with something. "Should I answer this?" he said. Adam could hear a phone vibrating. The terrorist sighed. "I might get my ass chewed off if I don't." He cleared his throat. "Hi, Miss Stella. How's it going?" Was this their boss? Adam heard the name Stella mentioned a few times when the terrorist was rambling to himself. "Nah, nothing much happening. She's holed up in her room and just fighting off the ones that tried to attack her." "Aha, aha. Yeah, she's not a normal human as the intel said. She got super strength and all that. Probably an Adumbrae too, yeah." Were they talking about Erend? But what the terrorist was saying to his boss wasn't true at all. They hadn't seen Erend since she went back to her room after buying something from the vending machines. And what was he saying about her being an Adumbrae? The terrorist continued talking on his phone. "No, haven't seen any of that wolf woman." "Yeah, I've seen the picture, I know what I'm supposed to be looking for." He paused to listen to this Miss Stella. The terrorist impatiently tapped his foot on the floor. "By the way, Miss Stella," he said, "like are we even sure that wolf girl will come here? Erend ain't got no signal in here. How's she gonna call for help? Unless she got a special phone like ours." Adam could hear the person on the other end was yelling. The terrorist raised his phone high above him so his boss wouldn't hear him sighing in exasperation. He looked at Adam and grinned. Then he answered her, Right. Roferio fried her phone when we first got her, but the wolf girl still came." He sighed. "Yes, I'll report if there's anything weird. Have fun testing the freak show we got here." The terrorist pointed to another screen, showing the event hall which was usually rented out for weddings and parties. "There they are," he whispered to Adam. The main group of terrorists congregated inside the event hall. A couple of them, obviously Adumbrae, battled some of the monsters they lured inside while the others captured the battle with cameras. It was a weird tableau, as if they were shooting a movie. Adam eagerly grunted in agreement. "Yep, you understand me." He pointed at the screen with the metal man. "Does that look like a wolf girl to you?" He tried to shake his head no, but the plaster prevented him and he ended up only rattling the headrest of his chair. Was that the correct answer? Wolf girl? Another Adumbrae? What was a wolf girl supposed to look like? "You're right, my pal. That doesn't look like a wolf girl to me too. That's why I didn't tell Miss Stella about it. Was I right to do that?" He slowly nodded his head, unsure of how to answer. Adam flicked his eyes towards the screen with the metal man and the riot of monsters. "Oh yeah. Thanks, bud." He leaned in closer at the screen. "You think that's Erend?" He shrugged. He wasn't familiar with Erend. And he didn't know if she was an Adumbrae as this man assumed. "You're not much help, are you?" "I'm not sure if that's her. The info we got was that she was a weak one, just basic Adumbrae stuff with no manifested specific ability yet. There's no way this is her unless she pulled a Leandro." "Hey, bud." He was whispering to Adam's ear. "You know what Leandro did?" He tried to shake his head and shrug at the same time, desperate to give any sort of signal that he had absolutely no idea about the things the terrorist was talking about. Adam held his breath. This man might do something impulsive again if he was bored. Was he going to play with him? Torture him? As if confirming his thoughts, the terrorist spun his chair so that they would be face to face. He wore a mischievous smirk. "Hey, my man. Tired of sitting there? Want me to let you go? A trap?" He tried to shake his head, then also tried to nod his head. His ears were ringing, he could sense that something bad was coming. The terrorist took out a small vial from his breast pocket. He held it close to Adam's face. "I nicked this from Slinky earlier. I wonder what thing inside it does. Do you want to know? MNGH. MNGH. Adam attempted to shake his head with all his might as he stared at the small worm swimming in the green liquid contained in the vial. He wanted to push his chair away from the terrorist, but his feet were also bound to the chair with plaster. What was that? You do. Good. No other monstrous asshole showed up. Finally they stopped coming. A severed head was by my foot, an oversized demonic baby head with one eye. Its pupil glowed crimson, same as the parasites tinged in red inside it. It faded. Both the eye and the glow of the parasites. A fellow Cyclops, he he he. I could feel derisive snorting coming but recalled my metal body wasn't capable of that. What a weird sensation. This guy. They were shattered now along with the rest of its body. But just the sight of them gave my metal self phantom shudders. I didn't experience any pain when I was broken into pieces. I didn't know what I was supposed to feel, like I should feel pain but couldn't. It wasn't pleasant. At all. Imagine seeing the most bizarre and uncomfortable uncanny valley effect ever, experiencing the weirdness not only with sight but all of the senses at the same time, with the eeriness cranked up to 10. Not sure if that made any sense, but neither did the sensation I felt when I got dismantled. At least, I could reassemble my body just as easily. Even if I was broken apart, the individual pieces remain. Connected with the same blue string I used to link with puppets. I then needed to concentrate to pull myself back together, and that required a lot of focus. Oh, well, whatever, I thought as I made my way to my puppet. Wait, no. My helper. No, that was also wrong. My friend. I have a new friend. The floor was slick, coated with about an inch or so of blood of various colors and gore and other indescribable discharges from numerous dead monsters. Most of the monsters still retained a humanoid shape, several were mutations of body parts, a handful were not connected to the human form in any way. There was a couple I just couldn't make heads or tails what they were supposed to be. Careful with each step I took, I navigated piles of shredded monster corpses. I already learned my lesson how slippery fresh blood could be. That stupid centaur couldn't have bullied me so much if I didn't lose my footing. The corridor was barely recognizable. I could put up a booth and open this as a haunted house and it would be a sure hit. Doors and walls of the rooms along the left and right sides were knocked down or broken through, the ones that still stood were painted with disgusting colors of battle. There was even a huge hole on the ceiling where a sofa-sized worm dropped from the floor above, it was now a deflated sack of leaking pus mixed in with all the other corpses. I hesitantly peeked up at the hole on the ceiling, cautious that something else might fall down. Huh. That's a lot of holes, I said. The worm apparently dug through several floors. So that's why a ton of monsters showed up. The ones from the higher floors jumped through the hole it opened. Lucky for me, my puppet got me covered. Ahem, my friend. Where was he anyway? The two blue strings linking us, the one that gives strength and the one that heals, would lead me to him. I could barely feel his mind. The last message I got from him was a week, no, when I tried to heal him after I re-established connection. I came upon strings of entrails scattered on the floor like a child through a plate of spaghetti in a tantrum, only that each strand of pasta were as thick as an anaconda. I traced the entrails through a wide opening in the wall and into a huge living room, probably a 3-bedroom unit, finding their owner, a golem creature that surprisingly had fleshy innards. I recognized its craggy exterior as the same material as the pillars of the building. The blue threads also led into this room through the hole. However, draped over the hole, half its body inside the room and half outside in the corridor, was a tall humanoid creature with a giant mouth that opened lengthwise from its neck down to its crotch. Yeah, I'm not going through here, I said. I went for the door instead, which was fortunately unlocked. I paused before the body of the golem. It had an amazing surplus of intestines for a half-stone monster. It was lying on top of a man, one of the residents. Dead. Squished by its weight. Lucky enough to remain human but unlucky to be in the middle of the battle of monsters. I continued into the spacious kitchen of the unit where I finally found my puppet friend. Saying he was not in a good shape would be an understatement. Laying on the rubble of the sink with his limbs splayed out, his body had grown about 3 times larger than his original size, extremely muscular with lots of tumorous growths which I assumed were a result of giving him extreme amounts of power from the energy core within me. He probably had muscles and bones that a normal human shouldn't have. On top of my friend's chest, pinning him down, was a horned head the size of a yoga ball covered with shaggy brown fur, a severed head of a buffalo monster. The headless body of the monster was thrown over the toppled fridge. Judging by the hole on the kitchen wall, it burst through from the next room and attacked my friend. I went closer to him and realized that not only did the massive coiling horns of the buffalo monster sunk deep into his flanks, messing up his insides, the front of his torso was also skewered by dozens of horns sprouting from the face of the buffalo monster. I didn't need the grayish color coating him to know that he's dying soon. Pity. Was I about to feel pity? Actual pity. I stared at the jets of water shooting forth from the busted pipes, down to the water mixing with copious amounts of inhuman blood that drained from his body. No. How should I begin this? I just realized you regained consciousness earlier, I said. When I began to control him, I was barely using my healing power, keeping the damage his body suffered above what was regenerated to make sure he wouldn't wake up and fight off my control. Eventually, I had to give him more strength, mutating his body even further. There was no going back for his body. There was no going back to human for him. What else could I do? Monsters came pouring in and he needed to get stronger. It was for both of us. If he died, I'd die next. At least one of us would survive. Me, obviously. It was a necessary sacrifice to make. To counteract the massive damage his body took, I pumped him with more and more of my healing power. Otherwise, he'd just die. Somewhere along the way, he might have come around. I wasn't sure when, must have been pretty early on. But he kept on fighting the monsters. He didn't try to drive me away from his mind. He didn't attack me with the tremendous strength I bestowed him. He could have easily broken me apart to disconnect our link. Which was why I never noticed it, and I was too focused on avoiding the monsters until he saved me. He didn't respond to what I said, but I felt his mind stir. Despite his earlier request to stop healing him, I decided to go against his will because I wanted to learn something. Why did you save me? I tried a different line of questioning as I felt his consciousness resurface. Save you? He was able to answer me with his mind, but I sensed he couldn't continue this for long. Yes, why? I was both speaking to him and also projecting it into his mind to make sure he understood me. When the centaur broke me apart, I was distracted and lost my connection to you. I also lost my connection with that other woman. A weakness that I should remedy by maintaining focus no matter what happened. You realize that? I did feel freedom. I didn't. But why though? Or you could have ran away. Even that woman chose to flee. I don't know what's up with her. First coming with me, then, I didn't continue anymore because I could guess his thoughts about what I did to that woman's husband. I can't run away. Because you're... I didn't finish my sentence out of consideration for my friend. Just like it was tactless to tell a friend they were ugly to their face, even more so to tell a friend they looked like an actual monster. I guess it will be hard to explain to the bid if you are able to escape from this building. Still, you could have attacked me for what I did to you. But you didn't. A true friend? I found it very interesting that I was resolved to know the reason. I need to fight, I need power, without you can't fight. The thoughts he sent to me were jumbled. He couldn't form the words. Then the image of 2 people was broadcasted clearly in my head. Your wife and daughter. I love them, I'll fight for them, more alien emotions. I hated this. I can save you. I'll try to find someone. No. Perhaps his strongest thought yet. Just let me die. I understand. Phew, good thing he didn't want to be saved. I wasn't feeling up to the task of looking for a surviving human I could coerce into willingly accepting the damage of my puppet friend here. I wasn't sure if I'd get lucky to find people like that couple again. Anything you want? Before I leave you here to rest? Promise me, promise. Yeah, sure. What do you want from me? A promise from my kind didn't mean much, unless it was something connected to our rules. We basically had two types of promise, a promise that we intend to break from the start, and a promise that we will keep with utmost loyalty until we no longer wanted to. If it suited us, we'd break any promise with anyone. This guy did me a huge favor. Since he was my friend, I'd extend him the courtesy of the second type of promise. Please don't. I held up both of my hands and watched as the blue strings from the index fingers of my left and right hand faded in the air. The red symbols on my fingers also stopped spinning. He wasn't able to finish his sentence, but he transmitted a hint of his thoughts, his last will to me. I promise I won't take control of your wife and kid, I said. Funny that he didn't ask me to promise to save them, but rather I'd leave them alone. I must admit that I did consider testing my fingers on them if I found them, but, for this time only and for the sake of my friend, a promise was a promise, until it wasn't. I came closer to him and attempted to close his eyes, just like what I did with Vanessa. Again, I also failed to do so. His eyeballs grew as large as tennis balls and were bulging out of their sockets. No way I could close his eyes. In death, he stared blankly at the ceiling. Okay then, rest in peace, my friend, I said. Wasn't it nice that I was making plenty of friends recently? 2 of them dead. But that just meant I needed to make more friends. I made my way to the elevators to check them. There were 4 elevators here, lining the left side of the corridor. I pressed the down button and none of them worked. One had destroyed doors, apparently opened by a monster that came from inside the elevator shaft. The other 2 doors weren't opening. I guessed monsters destroyed the elevator in other floors. The last door was open as the elevator stopped in this floor. I peeked inside. However, I didn't back away as something caught my eye. In the corner of the elevator, nearly hidden by the bodies, was a cart with boxes, like the ones delivery company people used to bring packages to people's doorsteps. The boxes were crushed during the fight that happened here, their contents strewn over the dead bodies. Broken vials and canisters. All empty. I don't know what those are supposed to be, but that cart would be an awesome way to carry my body. Extracting the cart from the pile of corpses inside the elevator was damn chore. I tried to hurry, concerned that some other monster could have snuck on this floor and visited my room while I wasn't looking. I was still alive though, perfectly fine in my metal body, so my body should also be fine. Too bad, I dislocated both my elbows in my haste to get that stupid cart out. Clumsy me. It ended up taking more time than if I'd just been careful because I had to concentrate on reattaching my arms. I also didn't want to stay too long in that elevator because I just knew the sight of leftover human body parts mixed with the dead monsters that were eating them would get burned into my memory and ruin my appetite for the next few days, that was, if I ever get out of here alive. I don't know why I found this more disgusting than other stuff I've seen. Heh. What the hell was I going on about now? Focus. I needed to focus. Some serious rest and relaxation would be great after all of this, I said, struggling to push the cart over the corpses in the hallway. Maybe a vacation. Hot springs would be nice. It would have already been a huge challenge getting the cart through this corridor if only human bodies were in my path, but traversing an obstacle course of monster corpses was an exceptionally monumental task. An obstacle course, I mused. Applause please, thank you very much. Stupid joke. I took care not to break the 2 wheels of the cart as it rolled over bones, fangs, claws, scales and spikes. I frowned in my head, obviously when I noticed pieces of flesh were getting stuck in its wheels. At one point, I had to pick up the cart and climb over a particularly large monster body blocking the way. I slipped again while carrying the cart and got coated with even more muck. After what felt like a century, even though it was only about 5 minutes tops of extracting the cart from the elevator and pushing it over the terrain of monster bodies, I finally reached the stairs. I wondered if the wife of that guy I used to patch up my friend was still alive. I could have sworn I heard her scream earlier. Or it might just be some other person getting killed in the lower floors. I paused in silence for several seconds, listening for any signs of danger. Everything was still. I left the cart by the stairs, then continued down the corridor back to my room. I could already see my next challenge, passing through the hallway of death again carrying my human body. I didn't bring the cart with me to my room because I wouldn't be able to use it to carry my body anyway. There were too many corpses littered on the floor. I'd just end up carrying both the cart and my body, which would be impossible. Or do I? I looked down the other side of the corridor. Wife and daughter. The door to their room was closed. It was open when I, borrowed my friend. I was sure of that. His family. Who else would be there? They might have sneakily closed the door when the fighting started. Prospective puppets just right there. This must be a record on how fast I changed my mind about keeping a promise. Well, the guy was already dead when I said I promised not to take control of his family, so I could just say that didn't count. I did a quick peek inside my room if nothing was disturbed, my special eye scanning through the darkness, then walked to my friend's room. Nothing like a friend visiting another friend's home, checking up on their wife and kid. I held the door knob and slowly twisted. Click. I turned it a few more times and it answered with that annoying click each time. Dumbass me. Of course, they'd locked the door after closing it. Was there a key card on his body? Too late to check it now. And I also didn't have the time to waste trying to break it down, especially with how weak I was. What if I tried to trick them to come out? Like what? Say, Daddy's here. If I was in the shoes of my puppet, friend, and I think there was some violent crime going on in the building, I would tell my wife and kid to stay put in their hiding place no matter what. And if I was the wife and my husband didn't come back, I also wouldn't open the door to strangers. Fine. Back to keeping my promise then because I was such a good person. You know what? I'd even do them a favor. I knocked then loudly said, "Hello. Your husband has gone off to find help. Just stay inside." I paused thinking what else to add. He said he'll be back with the bid. There are Adumbrae in this building. You might have seen them. So, don't come out. I think that was enough to make them stay there until the bid eventually came to rescue survivors. By that time, I'd be sure to escape from this building. I'm going to hide now too. Good luck to both of us. That should be fine. I jogged back to my room and checked if my body was still safely hidden behind the sofa. Yep, still there. I pulled it out to the middle of my living room area and opened the blanket wrapping my head to be sure. Still pretty and cute, looking like Snow White waiting for a prince to wake her up from a deep slumber. This could also be the story of Sleeping Beauty. Both of them needed a prince. Step away from her, you monster, a shaky but determined woman's voice ordered me. This person turned on the lights of my room. Oh, not a prince but a new problem. I had my back to the doorway, crouching down on my human body, so I couldn't see who this newcomer was. Still, I was relieved she was human. I had enough of these monsters to last me a lifetime. And she didn't seem to be an Adumbrae or anything of the sort from the way she addressed me. A new puppet candidate? Bang! What did she want with me? Even if she had a gun, it was a stupid thing to try and fight monsters. I threw my friend's gun away after I shot a couple of zombies and it didn't do shit. Slowly move away from that girl, she said. No sudden movements. I can put the rest of the bullets of my gun into the back of your head, you Adumbrae. Sorry to inform you, lady, but bullets can't pierce my metal body. But I didn't tell her that. I slowly raised my hands in surrender while shuffling away from my human body. Then I gradually stood up, my back still facing her. Turn around, she said. I followed her orders and got a good look at her. A frizzy brunette, her wild hair tamed as much as possible by tying it into a high ponytail. I deduced she was a resident because she was wearing a bathrobe over her nightdress. Her skin was evenly tanned, not artificially, more like she spent a lot of time under the sun. I guessed she worked out a lot outdoors, her nicely toned legs were proof of that. With my enhanced eyesight, I noticed hints of wrinkles on her face. Probably mid-40s. Her body looked really good for her age. I might have seen her around before, especially since we were close neighbors, but I couldn't recall. I had an idea who she was. Okay, don't shoot. What do you want me to do next? I said. I wasn't an expert, but the way she held the gun seemed professional. That voice, so it is you. Me what? I said, acting dumb. The one outside my door about my husband. Where is he? Will you look at that? I was right and she actually came out. It was good that I had a metal body, or I'd already be giggling. I don't. Don't lie, Adumbrae. Did you do anything to him? She shot again. The tile between my feet exploded. I can kill you, you know that. A headshot is. And then what? If you kill me, how will you find your husband? I. Calm down first. As if telling someone to calm down in a stressful situation ever worked. What I said is true. Your husband is trying to look for a way to escape this building and get help. I don't know where he is now. Somewhere in the lower floors. Was she aware I was the one who attacked her husband in their room? Their room was dark, but with my enhanced eyesight, I would have seen her. And she'd come to the aid of her husband if she saw us fighting. Maybe she was hiding with their kid inside the bedroom at that time. But how? The monsters in the corridor, she quickly glanced to her back, as if expecting one of them to sneak up from behind, and then looked back to me. Is my husband dead? Oh, boy. I'd rather not be the one to bring her the bad news. Like I said, he went to get help. Bullshit. He got past that. All of those things. Those monsters. She pointed outside. Don't bullshit me. Or did you kill him? I really didn't want to be sucked in an emotional scene. I just found it uncomfortable to stand while someone cried because of some stupid thing. Super uncomfortable. Like when people sing happy birthday to you and you didn't know what to do. I think it was better to tell her the truth after we escaped, my friend was going to prefer it that way. And since she showed up here through her own volition, I was going to drag her along. Answer me, Adumbrae. Mommy, called a little girl's voice from outside. Are you there? Just wait a minute, sweetie. I'll come back in a bit. She stepped closer to me. What did you do to Caesar? Mommy, I'm scared. Don't come out here. Lady, if I may, I said. You got two choices here. Stay inside your room and wait for your husband, who may or may not be alive. Her face twisted with rage. I honestly don't know, lady. I already told you don't lie to me. Mommy. Don't leave me alone. Lizzie. Stay inside our room. It's dangerous out here. Listen here, lady. Shooting me won't change anything. Anyway, your second option is to go out and try to find him and escape, whatever you want. As you can see by what's outside, it's not a good idea. I suggest going for the first option. I can't guarantee you'll be completely safe, that no monsters will come, because there's a ton of them here, but the alternative is more dangerous. So, just let me be here. Still facing her, I took a step to the side, towards my human body. Bam! I waved my fingers before my single eye. Nothing seemed damaged. My enhanced eyesight was working fine, I could see the healthy green color coating this woman. Where's your brain? She shot me a couple more times, hitting me dead center on my chest. Obviously, that also did nothing, but I nearly fell over from the force of the bullets. Her stupid little kid screamed in their room. Save your bullets, I said. Those won't hurt me. I feel so cool. Like I was role-playing an indestructible hero or villain, in this woman's eyes. Go back to your room and protect your kid. Pray to the Mother Core, or the High Overseers, or whichever god you worship that I win this fight against those monsters, and also pray that they don't come for you before I succeed. Well, what are you talking about? The monsters outside, I killed them all. Time to reel her in. That was how your husband survived. When he went out of your room, he ran into me fighting the monsters. I was perplexed why he didn't go back to his room. Now, I understand why, he didn't want to lead them back to his wife and daughter. Admirable, and very brave. And very annoying because I expended nearly all of my powers protecting him while killing the monsters. Is that what happened? You killed them. He continued running and I don't know where he went because I was focused on fighting. Now, if you don't have any business with me, please go back to your room and hide because I have to get this woman, I pointed at my human body, out of this building. She's the target of the Adumbrae who sent these monsters. Are you? She started to say as she cautiously lowered her gun, the confused look into her face turning into one of understanding. Are you one of those Adumbrae that fight other Adumbrae? With a nod of my head, I said with as much authority as I could muster, yes. Yes, I am. Mom, it's so stinky, Lizzie, the 4-year-old daughter of my friend, Caesar Pintor, said to her mother. Caesar's wife, Dominique, or Doms for short, as she said she preferred to be called, replied, I already put plenty of perfume on your mask, sweetie. You can still smell it. She made makeshift masks for herself and her daughter, folding squares of paper towels sprayed with liberal amounts of perfume, wrapping them in wide handkerchiefs, and then tying those to cover their noses and mouths. I was going to offer them the masks I bought, but then I realized it would be hard to explain why I knew about those, not that those masks would be much of an improvement to what they were using. Yes, Mommy. Super stinky. The kid said, coughing in between her words. Cover your nose, okay? I'll try. She did, first with one hand, then clumsily with both. Still smelly, whined the piece of shit who was a spitting kid version of her mom. Mommy, help me. You cover my nose. It was like she was asking for monsters to come to us. I can't do that, Dom said, trying to keep her voice calm and steady as she stepped over the remains of the giant monster mouth ball, oblivious to the fact this was her husband's handiwork which she should be proud of. The huge tongue of the mouth monster spread on the floor like a mini red carpet rolled out to welcome us. Mom's hands are busy, okay? I'm holding you up. Other hand. I'm helping, Aunt Pino. Dom stole a glance at me, checking my reaction. You're a big girl already. You can cover your own nose, okay? I nodded at her. I introduced myself to them as Pino, short for Pinocchio. We both had marionette bodies so I'm not good at thinking names, okay? I didn't have much time to get creative. Doms introduced me to Lizzie as an aunt to help her get more comfortable with me. I want to help Aunt Pino too. You can't. We're carrying really, really heavy baggage. She just moved in the building. Just stay still. That will already help, okay dear. The baggage she referred to was my human body, both of us were carrying it like a wasted friend after a wild frat party. I gave her no information other than a precursory explanation that the Adumbrae desired this human body, and it wasn't dead but affected by some sort of power which I didn't want to fall into wrong hands. I could see in her expression she simultaneously wanted to know more and also didn't want any part of it. She chose to hold back her questions and concerns. I suppose Doms prioritized getting her kid out of here and go with the person who seemed to know what was going on, even if that person wasn't human and was apparently kidnapping someone. Priorities, people. This woman got hers right. Okay, Mommy. I'll stay still. Aunt Pino, the brat said in a muffled voice, both her hands covering her mouth and nose as she nuzzled into her mother's chest as if hiding from the smell would work. Your voice is funny. It's because I smoked when I was a teenager and didn't listen to my mom, I said. So, you listen to what your mom tells you, okay? I added, mimicking Dom's way of talking to her kid. Don't follow my bad example. I wanna see you, Aunt Pino. It's better if you don't, Lizzie dear, Dom said. When I visit Aunt Pino, I always wear blindfold. Yee. Yes, you have to. I'm very shy, you see, I said, trying not to laugh. The kid looked funny with handkerchiefs covering her entire face. Seeing me wasn't the main problem. Her mother understandably didn't want her to see the dead monsters and humans. Are you ugly? She tried to take off her blindfold, but Dom squeezed her and told her to stop it. Why not? Lizzie asked. I'm respectful. Respectful. I won't say Aunt Pino is ugly even if she is. No. Dom said. Aunt Pino isn't ugly. She looked at me with worried eyes and bowed her head a couple times to say, sorry. Why though? As if getting offended by a kid was a big deal in the face of being trapped in a building full of monsters. She might be assuming my looks were a touchy subject for me, that since I lost my human body after turning into an Adumbrae I had strong feelings on topics of appearance. I was aware some Adumbrae did resent eventually turning into a monster, but that was rare given the feeling of power and pseudo-immortality was generally the main driving factor of people giving in to the Adumbrae. Why so smelly? Lizzie said, already forgetting about wanting to see my appearance. Doms concocted some explanation about leaks flowing out the corridor, plumbers unable to come at this late an hour, and irresponsible management that should get fired, all while carefully navigating through the corridor of monster corpses and carrying more than half the weight of my human body on her left shoulder since she was taller than me. Her daughter, ever so inquisitive, kept on asking questions upon questions, which Doms dutifully answered. She amazingly kept her cool even though we were practically walking through hell and she was helping an Adumbrae. I guessed it depended on the person how they'd react to a situation such as this. I could tell Doms was a survivalist, a practical and pragmatic woman, intent on saving herself and her child even if it meant teaming up with an Adumbrae actually, similar in mindset to her husband. She might be aware of the viral video posted by Reginus on Snippet about me. Well, a different transformation of mine. Could it be the reason she was open to the idea of a helpful Adumbrae? But why was she so good with guns? Was she in the military before, or maybe an ex-cop? Or they were just a gun-loving couple, Caesar had a gun too. Whatever her backstory was, she was reliable and dependable. Right after we agreed to team up following some delicate but brief negotiations, she went to get her kid and got back to me having changed out of her nightwear into something more suited for running, ready with those improvised masks for herself and her kid, and armed with a gun and a huge hunting knife attached to a sling around her waist all under 5 minutes. I would have preferred if I could take full control of her body, but I scrapped that idea, recalling I didn't notice Caesar, her husband, regaining consciousness. While both of them had the same motivations, they were in different situations and would react differently. If I did take control of this woman and she woke up in the middle of the fight, she'd certainly attack me the first chance she'd get and then run away to find her child. And where would that leave me? Alone and unable to protect my human body. Worst case, I can always return to my human body and then turn into Blanchett. Rush the transformation into the big bad wolf and bust out of here. To me, that sounded like an awesome plan. But I still couldn't see the reason why Spooky Aaron didn't want me to use that option. There was usually some reason, even if convoluted, for her instructions, so I was going the Blanchette route only in the direst situation. I supposed it was better to actually make a group of willing puppets, as ironic as that sounded. I'd need to be careful not to treat them as one-time use tools, but I'd also have the benefit of teamwork and being able to test my powers. And Doms could help me to convince other survivors, if there were still any, to join us. Wait. Was this why Spooky Errand wanted me to use this power? So I'd be forced to make a group. Power of teamwork. I noticed Doms subtly trying to check the corpses we passed, especially the ones that looked like humans. She was also checking the rooms through the open doors and broken walls when she thought I wasn't looking at her. She didn't know my Cyclops eye had a wide range of vision, almost like a fisheye lens but not as warped. I knew she didn't quite believe me when I said that her husband survived. Understandable. Predictable. This was, perhaps, the most important reason why she'd make a good teammate. She'd do anything to protect her kid, especially when she thought her husband was already dead. While I couldn't relate to her love for her family, her main driving force, I perfectly understood that anything she'd do was and she'd do anything towards her goal. There was no need for trust if someone was this predictable. The perfect ally. It was also predictable she'd eventually betray me when the opportunity came she could escape with her kid without my help. Naturally, I needed some precautions. From behind my human body, using my right arm holding up my share of its weight, I pointed at Dom's back with my middle finger. There was a slight hiss as the blue thread shot forth. She didn't appear to notice the sound, neither did she give any sign that she felt us getting linked. "Lizzie, I'm going to put you down, okay?" Dom said as we reached the cart by the stairs. She looked for a spot on the ground that was free from blood and gore. "Stand here, okay?" she said. "And continue covering your nose." "I can't move." "No," she sternly replied. "Unless you want to step on leaking water from a toilet," I chimed in. "No. You." Doms and I set my human body in a standing position against the back of the cart. We wrapped it once again in blanket, binding it tightly to the cart with strong ropes I found in my kitchen. Thank you, Mom, for stocking my kitchen with useful stuff. Moms do know best. The end result of our efforts looked like we were delivering a mummy to a museum. "Let's start going down the stairs," I said. "Are you sure we can't use the elevators?" Dom said, looking down the stairs with apprehension. She adjusted her mask, the smell probably seeping in. More dead monsters, their body parts strewn over the steps. I wasn't sure if this was all of Caesar's kills. Most of them appeared to have been cut into pieces by blades. It was that stupid centaur. I shook my head. "Some of them got inside," I said, nodding to the monsters, careful not to mention them to the blindfolded Lizzie. "All 4 of them are not working." "I see, when the leak happened, dirty people might have rushed inside." "Most likely." I pulled the cart to the top of the stairs. "Shall we start?" "It's going to be a long way to go." "It is," Dom said with pursed lips, thinking hard. "What do we do if more of them came? Is there no other way? The elevators on the other side of the building?" I said, meaning the other wing. "I doubt those are still working. I suspect they also suffered the same fate over there." "You're right. All of these," she said, pointing to the monsters, "seem to have spread all over the building." "What are you talking about, Mommy?" "Nothing, Lizzie. We're just thinking where to go because the stairs are awfully dangerous, especially while carrying heavy bags. If the elevator here is dirty too," she piped, "then use that big elevator." "What big elevator?" I said. "The big elevator where we put the big cabinet. Remember, Mommy? That big cabinet won't fit in the normal elevator. The freight elevator." Dom snapped her fingers. "It's in the center part," she said in answer to the quizzical tilt of my head, pointing down the corridor past the busted elevators. She must mean the middle part of the U-shaped condominium building. Lizzie's right, we can use that. There are 3 elevators there, the 2 normal elevators, plus the freight elevator. All 3 of them go straight to the parking area. We could get to my car and then go out and call for the police or the bid. What do you think? Okay, I'm just going to ignore the going to the police part of her plan. I didn't think I was going to be part of that. What surprised me was that there was no mention of her husband. Was she writing him off? It's a good idea, I said. Let's go with that. Honestly, the elevators in the center part of the building weren't even in my mind. In all my time living here, I had only been there twice, when I moved in, and when Mom visited me last Christmas and asked we tour the building. As far as I knew, there were offices, function rooms, those kind of stuff there. There were also suites managed as sort of a pseudo-hotel residence style thing by the property manager. Caesar would have also gone that way for sure. There we go. Although, from the tone of her voice, she didn't believe what she said. We might run into him, I said, pushing the cart in that direction. Yes, I hope so. She picked up Lizzie and followed me. And there are fewer people in the center area. Which means fewer, she nodded at the monster we passed before helping push the cart over its leg. I nodded. And even if we can't use the elevator, the stairs there would be way safer too. This was such a stroke of genius to bring her along and not turn her into a puppet. Unlocked the power of teamwork. I should get a medal, I thought sardonically. Hang on, she said, grabbing the handle of the cart and holding it back. What? Let's pass through here. She steered the cart through an open doorway. Oh. This room. I followed her so she wouldn't suspect anything. These big rooms have 2 doors, some even 3. We can bypass all of that outside by going through here and exiting out the other door. We're in the very big room. Lizzie excitedly said. Like the one Daddy said we'll get if I have a baby brother. I wanna see. Lizzie, no. Don't take off your blindfold. Doms halted before the pile of rocks that was the remains of the golem monster. If you do, I'll get really angry. She peered at the face of the man squished under the golem, then sighed in relief when she didn't recognize him as her husband. I continued pushing the cart to the other end of the huge room so she'd follow me and not wander around. I didn't want her to see her husband, that was, if she could even recognize him and turn into an emotional wreck. I wasn't paid to deal with that. Where are you going? I'm just checking if the other people living here are still okay. She was probably going to say, alive, but that would be hard to explain to Lizzie. They're a big family, although I don't know them personally. She went to the kitchen. I'll be quick. I rolled my eye but didn't do anything to dissuade her. Half of me was interested in seeing what would happen. Here, she called. Pino, we can pass through here. Oh, I didn't know there's a hole here, I said, arriving at the kitchen. The overgrown corpse of her husband and the dead buffalo monster that finally ended him were both untouched. I was 50-50 on whether I should admit I've been here, deciding in the end I should play dumb. Good thinking. We can pass through then exit out of the next room. Yes we can, Doms slowly said as if she had a hard time talking. She paused in front of her husband's dead body. Way better than passing through all of that outside, I continued. What's going on, Mommy? Doms didn't answer. Her eyes glazed over. Mommy? Lizzie said. Are you okay? Is there a problem? I said. No way she could identify Caesar's monster body. It was mutated beyond recognition, even his own mother wouldn't recognize him. Also, there wasn't any shred of identifiable clothes left on his body. He was wearing only underwear before and there wasn't any of that left now, his monster dong just hanging out of sight I'd rather not focus on. Nothing, she said. She blinked rapidly and took a deep breath. I don't know what came over me. We should move on. Yes, right. She nodded as if to convince herself about something. Right, let's go. I'll pass through the hole first so I can help you with getting the baggage through. Okay then, I said. Seriously? Did she sense something? Was this something that had to do with love? I recalled Mom getting depressed for several months when Dad died. I wondered what that felt like. I pushed the cart closer to the hole after Doms went to the other side. She set Lizzie down, once again instructing her not to move. Pass the handle here, she said. Careful with it, I said, tipping the cart to her side. Doms gripped the handle of the cart and started pulling it through. I pushed up the wheels of the cart over the lower lip of the hole. How about you? Movement in the corner of my eye. Something was crawling on the ceiling of the next room, a zombie creature with way too many arms and hands, a human spider mutant. Look out! I said, pointing behind her. Before even knowing what it was, Doms pushed her daughter away. The monster dropped from the ceiling and pounced on her. Not that easy. I pumped power to Doms using the middle finger of my right hand through the thread connecting us, thinking hard to make her body use the power, hoping that she would be too surprised to counteract my thoughts. The monster grabbed her and bit her neck. Ah, she screamed. Confusion replaced her expression of shock and fear. Waha, she exclaimed, realizing that the fangs of the monster didn't penetrate her skin, meeting the armor plates that was starting to cover her body. What's going on? Fight! I ordered, at the same time transmitting it to her mind. Fight for your kid. Kill it. Lizzie, get down on the floor. Doms unholstered her gun and pointed it at the head of the monster, ferociously gnawing the side of her neck. Bam! Bam! Her stupid kid screamed shrilly in terror. The spider monster, its face bloody, an eyeball dangling out of its socket, let go of Doms. It shoved her away and jumped back to the ceiling. Fortunately, Doms was also able to keep herself upright, pushing herself up on the handle of the cart which was slumped over the opening. Our faces close together, she looked at me with fierce eyes. What in the Mother Core's grace did you do to me? Don't worry. But before I could give her an explanation, she turned her back to me and faced the spider monster, her gun pointing upwards. Our enemy was erratically crawling all over the ceiling, shrieking in pain, dripping its gooey black blood on the floor like an abstract painting. Such bad timing, I said. I pulled the cart with my human body back into the kitchen with Caesar's body, then I dove through the hole. I spent time getting Doms on my side. I wasn't going to let my initial investment on forming a team go to waste. Plus, we couldn't lose here. My human body is here. Doms swore as she missed a couple of shots. Creech, the monster shrieked at us. An extremely long spiky tongue extended out of its mouth that was partially torn by a bullet. Mommy? What's happening? Lizzie said, her voice quivering. Still with her blindfold on, she crouched beside a small table a few feet to my left, sticking as much as possible to the wall. The monster turned to her. No! Doms yelled. I leapt in front of Lizzie. A sound cracked in the air. Wham! Something whipped my side, sending me rolling across the floor. I pushed myself back up so I wouldn't crash into Lizzie. I positioned myself to shield her as the tongue shot in our direction again. It hit my back. The force was tremendous, sending vibrations through my body, but I felt no pain. Don't touch my baby. A couple more shots, followed by a mournful inhuman whine, the bullets finding their mark. "Emmo, Mom." Lizzie took off her blindfold, saw me and cried, "Ah. Mommy, help. Hey, I look weird but I don't look scary." "Don't be afraid," I said. I would have offered her a smile, but my metal face didn't have that feature. "It's me, your Aunt Pino." "No," she said with a kick. "You're not. You're a monster. Help me." "What are you doing to her?" Doms yelled. her gun still continuing its duet with the monster's shrieks. "Your daughter is fine. Get your hands off her." A loud crash followed. I turned to look at what was happening. The monster still hung from the ceiling with its many thin arms. The upper half of its face blown off by Dom's expert shooting. It could no longer see, resorting to wildly swinging its thick tongue laced with fearsome barbs every which way. It appeared to have luckily, or unluckily, caught Dom's with its tongue and sent her flying. But she was now crawling to a sofa chair to hide behind it. The armor presumably saved her from severe injuries. The tongue whipped in her direction, tearing up upholstery and filling the air with feathery white cotton. "Let go of me," the brat said, continuing her futile struggle. "I wasn't strong, but I sure can hold a 4-year-old down." "Stay still or we'll get hit," I said. The tongue whipped over us and I pushed Lizzie to the floor. The vase on top of the table beside us shattered with the passing of the tongue. The kid cried as the broken pieces of wood, shards of the vase, and shredded flowers rained down. "Lizzie. She's fine," I assured Doms. "How are we going to win this? Should I also connect my first finger with Dom's and give her strength? But what assurance did I have she wouldn't go after me when we won? Even before that, she'd fight off my thoughts of making her mutate. She was now aware of what I was doing. And why was this monster still alive? Its head was already blown off. The parasites shed the red color. They're still alive inside the monster. I recalled the first couple of zombies I fought with my first puppet. They seemed to be the same type. "It's the tongue," I yelled at Doms. I also sent my thoughts to her because it was faster to explain everything that way. "Got it," she replied with her mind. As the tongue swung near her, she leapt from behind the sofa, almost tumbling from the weight of her armor, and caught it. The spikes on the tongue snagged and ripped her clothes, but it couldn't penetrate her white bony armor. She stabbed the thick piece of wriggling flesh repeatedly with her knife. Goo spurted out, splashing on her clothes. The spider monster tried to fling her away, but couldn't. It didn't have the momentum, and the armor was too heavy. "Don't make it thicker." I advised her what I learned from my brief experience of using the armor finger on one of the fleeing residents when Caesar was fighting the monsters on our way to the elevator. "You'll get weaker." In its desperate attempts to pull its tongue free, the spider monster accidentally fell from the ceiling. The part it was hanging on to broke off. It rolled on the ground, trying to flee, but Doms hugged its tongue and continued stabbing it. The tongue was steadily growing bigger, the host body slowly shriveling up. "Ah! What's that?" Lizzie said, poking her head through my arms, spotting the spider monster. "Shit!" I exclaimed. The spider monster, sensing us, tried to go in our direction. Fortunately, it was already too weak. Doms pulled it towards her. The tongue was bleeding out. She was practically swimming in black goo. "Quick, go over there," pushing Lizzie onto the other side of the room. Okay. She didn't resist anymore, crawling away from the monster as fast as she could. She looked back at me. "Aunt Pino, save Mommy, please." "I will." I grabbed a broken leg of the destroyed table and rushed to the spider monster. This guy was going to die given like a minute or more of bleeding out, but not before I showed off my good side. With my special eyesight, I could somehow detect the points of life force of the tongue of the spider monster, which was essentially its main body by now indicated by more concentrated glowing red spots. I stabbed at them with the sharp end of the table leg, backing each downward thrust with my weight. Black goo also splattered on me, but they slid right off my smooth metal body. After a tense several seconds of holding it down, me with the crude stake and Doms with her knife, it stopped moving. Doms stood up. "Is it over?" I withdrew my power from her. Shards of white armor fell off her body, leaving her with torn clothes coated in vile black goo. "Mommy! Are you okay?" Lizzie came running to her, but stopped and violently coughed upon inhaling the stench of the foul substance. "Sweetie, don't come near me." Her daughter was puking on the floor and she helplessly watched. "Hand me your knife," I called to Doms. She walked towards me, her eyes suspicious, but, after a moment's hesitation, handed it to me handle first. "Thank you," I said. I knelt over the body of the monster, the human body not the giant tongue, and stabbed the remaining point of red I saw at the nape of its neck. One of its offspring, I surmised. I had seen them multiply with my life force vision, if that was the right term, inside the zombie that was knocking on my door. There. Done. Good teamwork. I extended my hand to her. "You gotta trust me after all of that." I was proud of my performance. "It's time." She glared at me. "It's time you explain to me what you did to my body. Explain what's going on. Explain what are you doing with that girl. Clean yourself up first so you can carry your daughter. There might be clothes you can use in this room. I can get the girl through the hole. We need to get moving soon. We can talk on the way." I also needed some time to think about a good story to sell. "Do I still smell bad?" Doms asked her daughter. She had wiped herself as best as she could and wore the clothes of whoever was living in that room. We found their corpses by the trampled door of their room, gored as they were escaping by the same buffalo monster that dealt the killing blow to Caesar. "No, Mommy," she bravely said, but her hands covering her nose and mouth betrayed her. Doms made her a new blindfold and mask from hand towels we, technically, looted. "Mommy, is Aunt Pino our friend?" "I hope so, sweetie," Dom said, giving me a sidelong glance. "So, Pino, are you our friend? Can we get our explanation now?" "Friend? Perhaps, for now. Not an enemy would be more accurate." I stretched one hand to gesture at the dying bodies we passed. "As to what's going on, you probably already have a guess. The group the bid fought last Saturday. This is their work. They aren't just some random smugglers dealing with illegal Adumbrae body parts. They're a group composed of Adumbrae. A huge organization, actually. We refer to them as the 2MS. I was talking out of my metal ass here. I wasn't even sure if this was the 2MS that wasn't even their actual name or some other organization who came to know about who I was. And were they really targeting me? Why just send mindless monsters? "I see," she said, although from her tone she hadn't fully bought my story. "An Adumbrae organization? Haven't encountered those since my stint in Bucharest." I made a mental note of what she said. Did she mean that huge cult in Eastern Europe that ended up controlled by an Adumbrae? "Where you met Daddy?" Lizzie said. Right? Right? "Yes, sweetie. Where I met Daddy." Dom's voice cracked a bit. She cleared her throat. "Okay, so Adumbrae are here. These, 2MS. Then the explosion. What did the media say about that again?" "That they were also smuggling explosives and it accidentally exploded in the fight." All a lie. It was the bid that deliberately caused the explosion. Of course, the bid won't admit that. Need to sprinkle in truths. Doms held out her arm to stop me as we neared splinters of a door in the middle of the hallway, as if something forced itself out of the room on our left. There were bloody handprints on the floor, each as wide as a suitcase. Whatever it was, it clearly wasn't here anymore. She waved for me to continue on. "If what you're saying is true, I can see why they'd changed the news. Many people died. Bid agents, police, other people in that raid. Innocent people in the surrounding buildings that collapsed. Why? Why were they willing to sacrifice those lives?" I paused for dramatic effect. Time to bullshit. Because they were trying to stop something like this. Like what's going on here in this building. And believe me when I say that it was way worse at the place they raided. A lot of the experiments escaped were released, rather. The bid really had no choice there. Is that what's happening here? The Adumbrae are experimenting with turning people into monsters. That's right. What I know is the 2MS settled in the abandoned tunnels beneath this city and set up a huge complex. They kidnapped many people for their experiments. They were able to do that because they control key people in this city, government officials, the police. That was the place the bid raided. Tunnels? The subway? I like trains, Lizzie said. Not the subway. The abandoned shelters for Adumbrae attacks constructed decades ago. I didn't even know those existed. We came up another destroyed wall and tiptoed our way past a pile of bones picked clean of flesh. Something here has been eating them. We stopped and observed our surroundings to make sure there was no threat. So, how do you figure into all of this? Doms asked. And this girl? I'm an Adumbrae who fights other Adumbrae. I'm afraid I can't explain more about us other than that, I said, intentionally using US so that she'd draw wrong conclusions. I suppose, I can say that I'm trying to stop what the 2MS are doing in this city. This organization we're fighting, they're looking for people who could become core brains, those who have high probability of being chosen by the mother core, and try to force them to turn into Adumbrae. All these monsters are just byproducts of their numerous experiments. Why wait? I don't understand. You can't force people to become an Adumbrae. Except for a purple bloom. You're right, you can't force people to become one. Even a purple bloom can't. It assimilates people into its consciousness instead, which is different. But the 2MS seems to think they can. And they're attempting it on potential core brain candidates. You mean this girl? She has the qualities of becoming an initiate? Something like that. I actually saved her from the underground complex of the 2MS. But, unfortunately, she escaped my custody and returned here to her condo unit. I wasn't sure what she was thinking. For now, I surmise her own energies are acting up. That's why she's out of commission right now. I don't know what to think of this. It's fine. This doesn't concern you anyway. Escaping is your concern. You're right. But you know what's a concern of mine? What you did to my body. Why did you use me? Why don't you fight? You said you killed all of those monsters back there. That's simple. My ability is to bestow powers on people, including myself. But it comes with the condition that the stronger the person I'm giving the power to, the more energy I need to expend. The definition of strong is a bit iffy. Suffice to say that my body is pretty indestructible, super strong in a sense, and I need tons of energy to make myself physically stronger for combat using my unique ability. I expended a lot of my energy in that fight earlier and my tanks are now low. However, I only need a small amount of power to give strength to something weak, like a normal human. I suppose I am weak in your eyes, said Doms with a smirk. Mommy is strong. Lizzie insisted. I help you become strong, I help you fight and protect your daughter, I help you escape. In turn, you're also helping me to escape. It's a win-win situation for both of us. There was a slight rumble. I stopped the cart. We were already near the center part of the building. Up ahead, the glass doors leading to it were shattered, the walls on the side smashed as if something big forced itself through. But how does it work? The specifics. Why can you speak inside my he? I held up a finger. We listened. There it was. Screams. Roars. Uh-oh, Lizzie said. What do we do here? What do you think? We can go back and use the stairs, or go forward, try to help these people, and maybe find a better way down. Your husband may also be there. You're right, she said, her expression growing determined. This is the best way to learn how my power works. Nothing beats a practical approach to teaching. Let's go. 1:07 a.m., Wednesday, February 5, 2020. Here's one coming up. Cassandra said. She anxiously shifted her stance, her left ankle still hurt after the bad fall she had running down the stairs. Fleeing in high-heeled boots was a challenge, but she was too stubborn to take them off. They are very expensive. She chewed her lips while watching the number displayed on top of the metal doors gradually tick upwards. She came closer, eager to enter as soon as it opened. This was the only working elevator out of the 4. 3, 4, 5, come here to the 16th floor. But what if there were people inside? She tightened her grip on the rubber handle of the baseball bat she wielded. If that was the case, then they just had to make way for her, or I'll force them to make way. Made of aluminum, the bat felt incredibly light. But it was also sturdy. It was a bat specifically made for home defense that the bartender kept below the counter in case there was an especially rowdy customer. This should be enough to dispatch anyone inside who tried to stop her from getting on. It wasn't much use against Adumbrae, as the bartender himself personally came to know, but it would be helpful in taking control of this Aliva. What are you doing? Melinda, the grouchy lawyer from Wilkins and Kingson, demanded of her. You're going to fight those monsters. Are you insane? Ah no. She didn't say she was actually expecting people inside. It hadn't crossed her mind Adumbrae could also be using the elevator. It was possible, but she was too prideful to admit that. She begrudgingly backed away from the elevator door. Let's hide, first. Come. Melinda trotted off on her platform sandals that sounded like cloven hooves when they hit the floor, the perfect sound for the devil that she was. Fine, whatever, Cassandra grumbled. Lawyers couldn't be trusted in her eyes, but she still followed her. Survivability was higher if she stayed with the pack. She could also use these people as shields when it came down to it. Over here. Raleigh, the gym attendant for the midnight shift, called to them. He had forcefully opened a nearby room by smashing the lock using a barbell with a couple of small gym weight plates attached to one end and an improvised sledgehammer. He followed after the two of them entered, giving off an air of protective masculinity, something Cassandra recognized all too often. A perfect candidate for a meat shield, she thought. Just like that bartender. She scrunched her nose. Ugh, it also smells. Is something in here? The door was locked. It just smells bad everywhere. It's like gasoline. The stench is already stuck in our noses that we smell it everywhere, Melinda conjectured. She turned to Raleigh. Don't turn on the lights, she said as he reached for the switch. We don't want to be noticed. She took a position next to the slightly ajar door, peering outside to observe the incoming elevator. Raleigh shrugged and stood beside her, trying to get a view as well. The last member of their group, the elderly but still spry Connolly, was already inside the room, giving it a quick look for possible threats, brandishing one of the prized swords from his expensive Persian blades collection, or so he said. The bright lights from the corridor coming through the small gap glinted off his scimitar. Cassandra could hear him furiously sniffing. What was that? Connolly asked as she approached him. You going to fight the monsters? Not really. No, she replied. She eyed the crusted blood on the sharp edge of the blade. The blood of his son that had the misfortune of visiting him this dreadful night, the elder Connolly had explained. He took his own son's life before he could fully transform into an Adumbrae. This man was a useful ally, but also a dangerous one. She had to watch her steps around him. We can only take care of the weaker, UNS. Stronger, UNS, don't bother. Quiet, Melinda whispered. She had a finger on her lips. With her other hand, she raised her silver revolver that looked like it had never been used before. It's here, Raleigh said. There was the ding of the elevator stopping on their floor followed by the subtle hiss of the doors opening. I can't see the back of the elevator, Melinda said in hushed tones. They crowded behind her. From the angle they were looking from, they could only see the left front half of the elevator. Should we rush out now? Cassandra said, hoping to encourage others to go out before her and bait out possible danger. What if there's something in there? What if the elevator leaves, huh? You don't mean to tell me you want to use the stairs? And what will you do if there's something inside? Kids these days. Hush, Connolly growled from behind them. Something's inside. The shadows. He was right. There was a hint of shadows on the floor. Cassandra didn't notice it immediately because the light from the corridor washed it away. A person? An Adumbrae? They wouldn't know if they didn't go out. There was a thud outside. A person. Melinda exclaimed. Someone had dropped face down on the floor. His torso out in the hallway, his legs still inside the elevator. The elevator dinged again, closing its doors, but the body blocked it. What good luck. Is he dead? Cassandra asked. Nope, Connolly answered. He's one of them monsters. Turning into one to be exact, Melinda said. The man jerked to life, then convulsed on the ground. His groans reached them. He turned over and they saw black veins creeping up the left side of his body, covering his neck, climbing his cheek, coiling up his arms to his fingers. They radiated from a point in his neck, a point that the man stabbed with a sharp object, although Cassandra didn't have a clear view of what it was. A knife? The man gripped the sharp object with both hands, driving it deeper into his neck. Red blood mixed with black liquid flowed not only out of his wound but also from his ear and mouth. He looks familiar, Cassandra said. She was sure she had seen him in the lobby when she complained about the foul smell to the janitor. The blue jacket with the logo of Marty's he wore, now partially obscured by black goo and deep red blood, was too distinct. My God, Rowley said. Is that Ramon? Ramon the pizza guy? Connolly clicked his tongue. Mother Core forsakes us. If the pizza delivery guy is turning into one of them, that means. The ground floor also has monsters, Melinda finished. Nowhere is safe. We still have to get to the bottom of the building somehow, Cassandra said. And there's our way. Taking the stairs is suicide. What do you suggest we do, Miss Know-It-All? We can, Cassandra turned to Connolly. They were scared for their safety. How about this old guy? She doubted her sex appeal would do much to him, so how about she tried this? He's still human. We can help him. At least let him pass on as a human. Unless our lawyer here has a problem with that. Humph. At this point, it is arguably self-preservation. There is jurisprudence to support. The elevator sounded again. It tried to close its doors, but the struggling pizza guy's body kept it open. He continued moaning in pain, continuing to stab whatever it was in his neck. He wasn't winning, that was clear. We have to act now. She's right, Rowley said. Cassandra did a mini dance in her head to celebrate. He nudged the door open with his shoulder, his barbell at the ready. If you guys won't do it, I will. A screech from behind them. A flash of black ball in the darkness of the room. Connolly yelled in pain. Thuds of struggle. Without knowing what it was and without looking behind her at Connolly's fate, Cassandra immediately dropped to the floor and crawled to the other end of the room as fast as she could. The old man shouted profanities, and Melinda joined in. Sounds of a fight. The lights were turned on, perhaps by Rowley, and they finally got to see what it was. The hell? What is it? And that pretty much summed it up. It was a crying, stretching its chubby short arms up, trying to reach Connolly. It grabbed the sword and pulled itself upward, the blade sliding through its body. Everything fell silent. Only their breathing could be heard. They looked at each other. Is that? Cassandra's eyes were drawn to the fleshy string growing out of the baby's stomach leading to something behind the couch, an umbilical cord. Might be, Connolly said. He held down the baby's deflated head with his boot and pulled out his sword. Ding! They all jolted in surprise. The elevator. Her ticket to escape. They nearly forgot about it. She stood up, ready to rush out. She was determined to fight her way into the elevator. She hoped that, at the least, Raleigh would go with her. They could leave the rest. She was at the doorway, beside Raleigh, when a blood-curdling shriek made her stop. All of them tensed up, looking for the source of the noise. "My baby," said a belabored guttural voice. From behind the velvet L-shaped sofa at the corner of the room, something stirred. An Adumbrae? Connolly might have missed it when he hastily checked the room earlier. A gnarled hand with extremely long, twig-like fingers gripped the top of the sofa, followed by a rotting arm that had several joints a human arm shouldn't have. It pulled the rest of the body hiding behind it. A 10-foot-tall woman towered over them, her head already hitting the ceiling. Her body was nearly just skin and bones, her tattered clothes draping loosely like a sail hanging on a mast in a windless sea. She cried black liquid from her sunken eyes. "Baby, where?" she moaned as she stepped over the backrest of the sofa with her freakishly long legs. Cassandra noticed the umbilical cord from the dead baby monster connected to between her legs. "Baby dead? We should run from this, Connolly said as 2-foot-long black claws burst out of the fingers of the willowy Adumbrae. "Out!" Cassandra shoved Raleigh out of the way and nearly jumped into the corridor in her panicked escape. The heel of her left boot broke. She fell on the floor, crying in pain as her foot and ankle twisted in an awkward position. Raleigh fell on top of her, but he dropped the barbell to the side as he did. Melinda jumped over the two of them. Connolly was the last to exit the room. "Stand up and run," he shouted at them as he closed the door. Cassandra was about to pick herself up, ignoring the pain as much as she could, when Raleigh stopped her from standing up. There was a crash. Something splashed on them. Blood. They looked up. Connolly's blood. "Oh my God," Cassandra said. The Adumbrae's claws pierced the door and went through the old man's chest. "Go," he managed to say before vomiting more blood. He roared and stabbed his sword into the door. A shriek responded from the other side. "Go," he yelled. Raleigh helped Cassandra stand up. "Where do we go?" "The elevator," she said, pointing her bat in that direction. "No," countered Melinda. "Let's go this way." She ran off the opposite end of the corridor. "Don't follow her," Cassandra said. She squeezed his arm. "I already came from there. Adumbrae are there too. Let's escape in the elevator." "But Melinda," Raleigh said, resisting her pull towards the elevator. "She's already gone." "Go already, damn it," Connolly said. "I can't hold AAA." The door shattered and Connolly was pulled inside the room. "The elevator," Cassandra said, almost whimpering as the pain of her injured ankle was getting to her. The wall to their left exploded. Connolly's mangled body was thrust into the hallway, held in the Adumbrae's grip, blocking their path. Both of them fell to the floor in surprise. The Adumbrae exited the room through the hole it made with Connolly's corpse as a battering ram. "Follow Melinda," Raleigh said. He set Cassandra down on the floor and picked up the barbell sledgehammer with both hands. "I'll hold this thing here for as long as I can. Come and get some of this," Raleigh yelled. Cassandra looked back as she limped, tracing Melinda's path, and saw him waving his barbell to swat away the Adumbrae's long arms. "Why can't these people just help me?" she panted, breathing through clenched teeth, trying her best to endure the pain. "Where's that hag, Melinda?" The Adumbrae flicked her fingers and cut off one of Raleigh's hands. He dropped his barbell and screamed in pain. The Adumbrae cried, "My baby! Who killed my BA?" Surprised at the abruptly cut off screams of the Adumbrae, Cassandra checked behind her once again. The head of the Adumbrae was on the floor beside Raleigh, who was holding his severed hand. A fountain of black liquid gushed out of the monster's neck. The Adumbrae fell on her knees, revealing their savior behind her. It was the pizza delivery guy. He was mostly human, except that his left arm has turned into a huge blade. Was he going to kill them too? 1:20 a.m., Wednesday, February 5, 2020. No. It hurts so bad Ramon wished for death. The centipede-looking creature with pincers dropped from the ceiling and jumped on him. He tried to grab it and throw it away, but it already latched on the side of his neck, securing itself with dozens of its sharp limbs. Unimaginable pain coursed through him as the creature effortlessly ripped his skin and chewed his flesh, digging deep into his body. He couldn't pull it out. He couldn't stop it. His mouth gaped in agony, but the pain was too much. He couldn't even gather the strength to scream out loud. Just let it all end. Be one crave for power reach across the veil. Why am I thinking this? His thoughts were jumbled. Was it the creature turning him into a monster? This was it then. Every trace of his humanity would be soon gone. But the pain slowly numbed and disappeared. Not just the pain. He couldn't feel it all. His own movements, the hard floor beneath him, the creature in his neck, nothing. It was as if time crawled to a stop. His consciousness was being whisked away, but at the same time he stayed anchored in his body. He was outside his body, witnessing it get taken over by the creature. At the same time, he was also inside his mind. Trapped. The creature was pushing him to a corner. He could hear its thoughts. It was calling out for something. You are nothing, life is meaningless, your life is meaningless. He already knew that. Why did he think that now? You can find meaning, it's not too late, I can give you meaning, what do you want? Who was this inside his head? I'm taking you with me. You're dying with me. Ramon repeated this mantra as he held on to the knife. In the swirling consciousness that wasn't his own, he was able to resurface. The next thing he knew, he had already stabbed himself. No. He stabbed the creature inside him. What happened to Bodhi and Johnson came back to him. Bodhi had stabbed the slug in Johnson's leg before it took him over. With this same knife. And then Bodhi, with amazing will, tried to kill the slug inside his head as it made its way to his brain. Bodhi failed and turned into a monster. Ramon resolved that he wouldn't. Better die as a human. What happened? Why am I still alive? The cloud over his mind was lifted. There were no other thoughts drowning his own. There was no pain. There was clarity. And strength. He clenched his teeth to stop himself from screaming out loud. He stood tall, brimming with power. And what was this before him? A headless monster. On the floor was the monster's severed head covered with long hair, its mouth wide open, screaming as it died. He continued looking down and noticed a blade. It was like the upper part of a gigantic crab claw crossed with a single-edged curved sword. My arm. Before he could gather his thoughts, the headless corpse stirred. Tentacles emerged out of the stump of the neck. There were roars from behind him. A couple of hulking monsters burst forth from the walls and charged towards him. Now wasn't the time to think about what was happening to his body. Now was the time to fight. Why did you have to bring him? A woman's voice. Who was she? Ramon might have heard her speak before, but he wasn't sure. She shouted over the din of someone or something pounding hard on wood. The door. There were also other sounds: scratching, wailing, eerie chatter, growls that made his heart uneasy. They were stifled, outside the room, maybe. He opened his eyes and winced at the bright light over him. Where was he? What happened? He's in Adumbrae, the woman said. He was shocked at her words, but Ramon closed his eyes again and pretended to still be unconscious. You should have left him there to die. Look, he already healed himself. Because he helped us, replied a man. He sounded like he had a hard time talking, he was in agony and was only forcing himself to speak. Not much help when he also destroyed the elevator. That was our ticket out. He helped us, the man repeated. Then he groaned in pain. And how sure are you he's going to continue helping us? Look at him. He's an Adumbrae. Ramon wanted to shout no to her, but he didn't move. Adumbrae? I'm not an Adumbrae. Why would she say that? Everything came back to him. The two continued to argue while Ramon laid still, processing everything that happened so far. What do I do now? A heavy object was being pushed. He felt the vibrations of the floor with his cheek. He could also feel that his body wasn't human. Without needing to look at a mirror, he just knew. Am I still me? Someone stamped their foot on the floor. He's not much help now, is he? The woman said. You only delayed us. And now we're trapped. He can help us. Try to wake him up then. If you're so sure he'll help us. I am not going to do that. Then what do you propose we do? You just let us here in this room to die. Shut up. Help me get more things to Tuong to block this door, said the man. They're trying to break it down. As if to prove his point, the monsters outside intensified their efforts to get inside the room, their growls growing louder. Hey, what are you doing with that gun? Are you going to kill yours? Don't shoot high. Ramon fully opened his eyes, sat straight up, grabbed the gun that was pointed down at his head, and threw it away. The woman yelped in surprise and jumped back. She sprinted to one of the bedrooms in the condominium unit and slammed the door shut. The other person in the unit was a shirtless man leaning on the stack of furniture and various things blocking the door. He was holding up a bat with one hand, ready to strike. But it was obvious he didn't pose any threat. His other hand was just a bloody stump, his face deathly pale and covered in sweat. The torn clothes he used to wrap his injury was dripping blood on the floor. Are you on our side? He said. Yes, Ramon said, lowering his blade arm, unsure of what he could say to convince him that he meant no harm. Yes, I'm on your side. There was the sound of something breaking. It was clearly the door being torn down even if they couldn't see it because it was covered by an ornately carved wooden cabinet. Suddenly, all of the things blocking the door lurched forward. No, the man said, throwing his body over the furniture. You're not getting in. Once again, Ramon didn't know what was going on. With his body. With his surroundings. But he only knew that one thing was certain. He was going to fight the monsters that were trying to get in this room. Fight them. And kill them. He strode over to the injured man with renewed purpose and helped him stand up. Go and hide. I'll take care of them. The man nodded and staggered away to find a hiding place, cradling his injured arm. Ramon held out his blade arm in front of him. The chitinous plating covering the left side of his body shifted, brushing against each other as he moved, like it was plate armor worn by a knight in fairy tales. Except that he wasn't a prince in shining armor, he was the monster. How was he supposed to use this blade arm? Just swing it wildly? It was sharp. He was strong, several times stronger than before. It didn't need a genius to figure out what to do. Just cut everything in my path. Something stirred inside his blade arm. Energy hidden within. Concentrating on this power, the blade glowed a sinister violet. Scattered along the spine of his blade arm, the part that looked like a huge crab claw, were holes, or more like small vents. These vents puffed up black smoke, as if something ignited inside his blade arm. The air around it shimmered from the heat. Let's get this party started, he said, giving his blade a few test swings. He snorted. Why the hell did I say that? The absurdity of the situation caught up with him. He laughed at the stupid line he said. At his stupid situation. At. Crash. A large tentacle shot through the cabinet. Ramon turned his body, positioning his armored part forward. The tentacle slammed into him, but he stood his ground. He was momentarily stunned not by the force of the blow but at how strong he became. He instinctively slashed at the tentacle. There was a blur and the tentacle was cut into pieces. I'm fast as hell. The tentacle withdrew through the hole it made. The pieces he hacked that fell to the floor burned with violet flames. Clawed hands were the next to come out of the hole, digging at its edges, making it bigger, ripping the wood and upholstery. Ramon jumped on the couch in front of the cabinet and slashed at anything that emerged out of the hole. The creatures on the other side squealed as he sliced them. The violet fire crept up their limbs, continuing to burn and consume their mutated and decaying flesh. With this wave of monsters retreating, Ramon saw through the opening what was coming next. "Oh, shit," he said, crossing his arms in front of him. A large ghoulish skull forced itself through the crowd of monsters packed in the corridor, shoving those that got in its way, smashing past what remained of the door and the rickety barricades. It burst into the room and slammed into Ramon. He arched across the air and crashed into the opposite wall. The skull, which was as large as his upper body, opened its mouth. Several voices speaking gibberish filled the air. And his head. "Ah!" Ramon cried out. His head hurt so much. His movement became sluggish from the pain. The voices were singing. The jumbled choir became increasingly louder and louder, the piercing voices speaking over each other, each one following a different melody, each song bringing up a painful memory from deep within him. The death of his best friend, his mother and father fighting, his pet dog. Something cracked inside of it and exploded. Once again, he was thrown back. It was the memories brought back by the skull's singing. He closed his eyes, trying to forget about them, but they wouldn't go away. "I'm going to kill all of you." He jumped through the doorway into the seething masses of monsters. He hoped that fighting and killing would make him forget about those memories. That it would also make him forget about his situation, that he was no longer human. He slashed at everything that moved. And all of them attacked him. He screamed in pain as they bit off chunks of his flesh, as they clawed at his body, as they yanked off pieces of his armor. A monster spat acid on his shoulder. Spikes buried in his back. The pain only increased his bloodlust. But in this rage, he was able to find peace and think. I wasn't much of a human before. And now, the human Ramon was practically dead. Gone. What remained was a monster with parts that looked like human, but a human, he was no more. His monster heart ached at this realization. Tears streamed from his human right eye as he continued fighting even as the monsters did their best to eat him. He couldn't hear anything other than the beat of his heart. Only then when he realized that he was screaming. And he couldn't hear himself. "Mom, I'm sorry." Memories of his family and friends. He didn't have a good life. He didn't accomplish much. Nothing to be proud of. A tiny blip in the entirety of existence that made no impact at all. He wasn't able to help Bodhi and Johnson. He set out to help Erend, but he also failed that task before he found her. He wasn't even able to kill himself before he turned into a monster. And when he died here, he would also fail those two people hiding in the room. He recalled what that woman said before trying to shoot him. "The least I can do is kill as many of these monsters as I can before I die." I survived," Ramon said. His body was grievously injured but was already healing back. He didn't know what to think. He expected to die. Is this a second chance? He trudged back to the room where those two people hid. If this was a second chance, then he was going to help these two get to safety, and any other survivor they may come across. He was going to kill each monster they'd meet. That would be one less monster hunting other people still alive in this building. Hopefully, Erend was one of those survivors. "It's not over yet," he said to himself as he climbed over the pile of monster corpses outside the doorway. His original plan of reaching the roof was still doable. The man and woman in this room, he was going to bring them up there. He also promised to try and find Erend, but he wasn't so sure he still could. And after that aisle, he didn't know what to do. There was no after that for him. He shook his head and looked for the two hiding in this room, following the man's trail of blood on the white tiles. He was going to think about that after all of this. If hiding in the sewers for the rest of his life was the answer, then so be it. It seemed the world didn't want him to die just yet. "Hello," Ramon said. "It's safe to come out now." He found the woman with the wounded man. Perhaps she looked for him during all the fighting. She didn't seem as bad as his first impression of her. Unfortunately, she also retrieved Bodhi's gun and was pointing it at him. "Back off, Adumbrae." "I'm not an Adumbrae." "I didn't answer the call of the Adumbrae from across the veil. I was turned into a monster. I didn't want this." "Is that so? Still a monster?" "Yes, you're right. But I'm on your side. I'm a victim too." She slowly lowered her gun. Her face was confused. He did save them twice now. She had been crying. Her tears ruined her heavy eyeliners. The man beside her was unconscious but breathing shallowly. "I killed all monsters outside," Ramon continued in a gentle voice. He knelt down and hid his blade arm behind his back. "I don't know how I regained consciousness and didn't become one of them. Like one of those outside that hunt humans. But I assure you, even if I look like this, I'm still human deep within, and I'll help you get out of this building alive." You will." Her face crumpled and she began crying again. "We have to get out fast. Raleigh is dying. He bled too much." The woman had a complete change of attitude compared to when she wanted to kill Ramon earlier. Apparently, she also cared for this Raleigh. Perhaps she was just stressed by the situation. He could relate to that. "Raleigh? Is that his name?" "My name is Ramon. I'm Cassandra." He picked up Raleigh and went out of the room. "Let's get clear of this place before more of them come." "Oh, how do we get down?" "The stairs." "We're using the stairs. No other choice." "But we're not going down." "Huh? What do you mean? Do you still have your phone?" "Yes, I have it. But there's no signal." "That's good." He patted Raleigh's pocket and felt that he also had his phone. Ramon had somehow lost his own when he dived the crowd of monsters earlier. You still didn't say where we're going. How do we get out of this place?" "Up." "Up? We're going up to call for help. That's our way out. They say your life flashes before your eyes when you were about to die. Fact? Or just a cliché line from the movies to sound cool?" "I've read an article about some research that suggested it was real to an extent. Science mumbo-jumbo that the last part of the brain to go before dying was the part with memories. Maybe it was real then. I dunno. None of that life-flashing thingy so far. Too bad I wasn't going to experience that now either. Given my indestructible body, I doubted if being the bait for a dangerous monster would count as a near-death experience. I was genuinely curious what it looked like though, that life-flashing thingy." A balding guy wearing glasses and a plaid shirt splattered with blood desperately threw a gun that was probably out of bullets at the monster. It harmlessly bounced off its hunched back. The monster continued eating, and the woman on the floor continued screaming. Bald guy bravely stepped forward to try and save the woman. Armed with an electric guitar that he took from one of the kids behind him, his son, most likely he bonked the gorilla monster on its head. It almost looked like a comedic gag, except that the monster didn't find it funny. It grabbed the man's arms, spreading him out like the letter T dangling in the air. The man cried for help as the monster tried to pull him apart. Unwilling to go down without a fight, he kicked the gorilla monster's head, but it caught his leg with its jaw and bit down hard. If I still had my human body, I would have cringed at the grating crunch of the bone. "Pino!" Doms yelled from somewhere in the opposite corner of this office space. She was hiding inside one of the still-standing cubicles in that area, waiting to do her part of the plan after I made my move. Whoops, I got too entertained watching the gorilla monster eating people. If Mom was here, she would scold me that I got entranced again with animals eating each other, just like she did when I was still a little kid. I stabbed the monster from behind with the spike, aiming for the bony ridge along the middle of its back, like its spine grew too large and protruded out of its skin. There were hints of the enlarged spinal cord showing through the gaps of the vertebrae. The tip of the spike hit the bony part instead of the spinal cord and glanced off. Oh well, I wasn't planning on killing the parasite myself anyway. From experience, it appeared we needed to kill these monsters twice: first, kill the main body, and next, kill the parasite that could still control the body. Or just inflict so much damage that could kill them both at the same time, like my best pal, Caesar, did, ripping everything in his path. Condolences to his wife, Doms. The gorilla monster still didn't pay any attention to me. How about this? Swinging my upper body down to add to the force, I held on tightly to the spike as I attempted to jam it into its lower back. The spike pierced its thick hide and penetrated about an inch. I did draw some blood. Yay! The monster looked over its shoulder, its mouth full of the bald guy's flesh and bones. It roared at me, spraying me with gore. Oh! Stop eating too much, that's not heal. I shut my mouth. Wow, that was awful. I sucked at coming up with one-liners. I needed to get better at this if I was going to cultivate a heroic face. The Saturday movie nights with Mom watching campy superhero movies wasn't a good influence on me. Hey, can we have a redo, wham? A massive backhand sent me in a direct flight path to the plasterboard wall of the office space. My body punched through it, tumbling into the next area, and kept on rolling until I crashed into a concrete column. I dropped to the floor in a heap, dust and pieces of concrete from the cracked column falling on me. Damage check. Joints. Body parts. My left hand, which was still holding the insect leg, was half a dozen feet in front of me, near the partition wall. I focused on pulling it back to my wrist. My left foot was a couple of feet to the left of my ankle. My right arm was bent backwards. The rest were still intact, but some joints were loosened. I concentrated on reforming my body again. I felt the impact of the hit in the sense that it vibrated throughout my metal body, not that it was painful or anything. The disconnect with what I expected to feel and what I actually felt with my metal body was disconcerting, like if you ate something that looked sweet and it ended up being savory. Weird, but I was starting to appreciate this body. I found myself in an empty portion of the floor. The lights weren't even turned on. Maybe it wasn't rented out yet. Through the hole on the wall my body made, I saw the gorilla monster flinging around the screaming bald guy like a rag doll. I waved my hands at it. I'm still alive. I could later say that I drew it here in this empty space to get it away from the survivors. That would lead credence to my story that I was a good Adumbrae. Come and get me. I called out. Seeing I was still standing, the gorilla monster bellowed at me. It threw away the bald guy it was eating at a water dispenser. The two kids chased after him. Yeah, they're probably his children or something. The monster pounded its hairy chest, hunkered down on its knuckles, then charged at me on all fours in an awkward run. Awkward, but powerful. A filing cabinet was in its way. One punch and it was flying. The same thing happened to the fake potted fern bush beside it. The monster's eyes glowed red in rage. I didn't move from my spot. I was supposed to be bait. But I did sit down and hug my knees, hoping this position would be best at keeping my body together. Doms. It's coming for me. I sent to her mind, although she also would have seen it. I'm moving. Giro. It charged past the plasterboard wall, carving out a bigger hole, and launched itself at me with its springy hind legs, almost reaching the ceiling in one great leap. Check the kids first, I managed to squeeze before two barrel-sized fists descended on me. Bomb! The ground, or even maybe the entire level, shook. My body sunk half an inch into the floor. This is pretty neat, I thought. I was literally looking at the floor cracking because a gorilla monster was trying to forcefully replace the tiles with my body. I held on to my knees and pooled all my thoughts in holding my joints tight. Doms wasn't here yet, so there was no need to control the power of my fingers. Jiro, Growo. The fists fell again and again like a group of burly workers with sledgehammers taking turns driving a stake to the ground. My body creaked, but it was only my detachable parts rubbing against each other. There was no damage to me at all. Zero, nada, squat, zilch. Also no life flashing thingy. Ah, too bad. Ha 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 ha. When the skeleton centaur was dismantling me, I was annoyed with how weak I was. Having an indestructible body wasn't that great compared to having the strength to fight. Power is fun. Having lots of it was awesome. There was a reason why it was one of the most common manifestation of an Adumbrae bleeding its existence into our world. The other thing was extreme healing abilities. Not quite like being indestructible, but it was obvious why a lot of people would also be enticed by that. Still, I thought super strength to be able to fight was better. Bam! Ha 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 ha. But now, I was warming up to having an unbreakable form. Bam! Bam! I'm still alive. I yelled to keep its attention on me. Ha 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 ha. Try and destroy me. I must say this was exhilarating. Getting pounded by a powerful monster, no sexual innuendo intended, while having this tough body was a novel experience altogether different from having super strength. As I descended another half an inch into the floor, I realized this was becoming an addicting experience. My only concern was the floor giving way. Between the legs of the monster, I saw the armored doms tending to the kids and the injured, or maybe already dead, balding man. What was taking her so long? I knew I told her I was indestructible and she shouldn't worry about me, but she should be more considerate with making people wait. Doms, it's focused on me. I'm coming. KRRCK. Huh. Wait, the floor. Hold yourself together, I thought with all my might. My body was already buried halfway in the concrete. Cracks were everywhere. Shit. Doms. Crack crack. The gorilla monster jumped up. Its feet and massive but fell on me like a dislodged boulder during an avalanche. Oh. Crash. Bomb. I madly floundered mid-air for half a second in the midst broken slabs of concrete and a hairy monster ass above me before slamming into the floor below. Am I still alive? Clouds of dust filled the room, but my special eye could see the greenish glow of the gorilla monster looming over me, the reddish hue of the growing parasite inside its body overlapped with the monster's outline. Groea. That was your fault, I said. Doms, I fell through the hole, hey. My arms. It was pulling me apart and roaring at my face in anger, covering me with spit, blood and bits of teeth. I couldn't overcome its strength and it pulled my right arm off. It tossed the arm away. But as soon as it let it go, I willed it to go back to me. It was surprised when my right arm flew right back and reattached itself to my elbow. Then I jammed my arm as deep as I could down its open mouth. It clamped down its jaws, but luckily its fangs hit my upper arm instead of a joint. A few more broken teeth were its reward. There's no way you can destroy me, I said, my cyclopean eye locking on its enraged bloodshot eyes. Pino. Something heavy dropped on the back of the gorilla monster. It remained standing despite the heavy weight of Doms with her armor, but lost its footing on the heaps of broken concrete and fell on one knee. Sorry, I got delayed, Doms said over the bellows of agony of the monster. She already got to work attacking the spinal cord. I was connected to Doms with 3 fingers. I increased the energy I sent through my strength finger while also matching it with healing from another finger. I tried to maintain a balance so she wouldn't suffer permanent damage after I disconnected from her. Just focus on fighting, I repeated my earlier advice to her. Don't think about increasing your strength or armor. Got it. The gorilla monster released my other hand and reached for Dom's, but its back was too broad and thick and its arms too muscular that it was having a hard time grabbing her. She continued hacking away at anything she could with her knife. As for me, I tried to squeeze anything I could grab inside its throat. Any damage would help out. I noticed these monsters weren't like Adumbrae, those regenerated, these monsters didn't. The parasites, on the other hand, grew by consuming the host body, which wasn't technically regenerating. The gorilla monster swallowed as hard as it could, its throat muscles contracting, its tongue pushing my arm further down. I lost some of my fingers, then my whole hand, then my arm. I was about to be dislodged from its mouth. It only needed to swallow some more and then bite off my shoulder joint. It grabbed my left arm before I could land another punch and pulled, while biting down my upper right arm inside its mouth, intending to tear me in two. I let it pull out my left arm. It threw it away and then tried to catch Dom's again. This time it succeeded. "Let go of me," Dom said. I saw her furiously stabbing the hands of the gorilla monster before it flung her upwards. She hit the ceiling and then crashed down on the floor. "Doms. Are you okay?" "I am still alive." Still hanging from the mouth of the gorilla monster, I looked behind me and checked her situation. She was trying to get back to her feet. Even though she was encased in white bony armor, she was bound to be terribly hurt. I increased my healing power by half a notch again. I was hesitant to put it in full blast because I suspected that it, like the power of my strength finger, had a terrible cost. The gorilla monster grabbed me by the waist and began pulling me down while also chewing my upper arm. Our situation was dire. Any life-flashing thingy incoming? None. Although its teeth couldn't dent my metal body, I was still helpless. Or was I? Was this the end? Of course not. If I really thought we had no chance with our current fighting power, I would have increased Dom's strength no matter the negative effects and just discard her after she died. But we weren't done just yet. To the right of Dom's was my left arm, and just a few feet further on was the monster insect leg. My left arm already started crawling across the rubble with its fingers to get to it. I was face to face with the monster. I looked it straight in the eye. "I'll be having my hand and arm back now." From the pits of its stomach, I concentrated on reattaching my fingers to my hand, pulling the hand back up the esophagus to reattach to my forearm, then reattached it to my elbow. The monster roared, the pain it experienced made obvious by the sound of its cry. I could only imagine the damage of its insides as it kept on trying to swallow my arm, but I kept on pulling it back up its digestive tract each time its throat muscles relaxed. It pulled more fiercely at my lower body and I just let it be. The joints of my legs popped out. There was no way I could resist its strength. I didn't need my legs anyway. I needed my left arm. "Come." My left arm soared through the air, triumphantly grasping the insect leg, heading straight for my elbow. As soon as it was reattached, I slammed the insect leg into the eye of the gorilla monster. Hitting the eyes was becoming my signature move. Black goo burst out of its eye. "Doms." I yelled both with my voice and my mind. "This isn't over yet." I yanked out the spike from the gorilla monster's eye socket and tried to stab its other eye. It turned away. I missed but did scratch its flat nose. It violently shook its head, whipping me back and forth. I hung on. "Keep your joints together." Thick fingers closed around my chest. I timed another pass at the other eye. Its remaining pupil widened as the sharp end of the insect monster leg pierced it. "Take that." I yelled in celebration just before it finally peeled me off its face. I abandoned my arms, my right arm remained inside its mouth while the left still grasped the spike jammed in its eye. It threw me on the floor, just my head and a torso remaining, and stomped on me. But I didn't care, there was no way I was going to die with this body. "Doms, where are?" I started my question, but she was already in front of me, slicing at the monster's legs that were trying to flatten me. The monster stumbled backwards on the rubble. I rolled my body away from it, freaking hard to do with no limbs. It swung its arms around, blindly trying to grab Doms, but she managed to duck each time even with her heavy armor. She continued hacking at the monster's legs, making sure it was never getting up. Then something shiny flew in the air. "My knife," Dom said. The white bone gauntlet Doms was wearing had extended and formed into a sharp end, like the pointy tip of a giant pickaxe. "See? Weapon," she said to me. She jumped at the back of gorilla monster that was crawling away and chiseled at the exposed vertebrae. This was one of the abilities of the armor finger. Cool. But this presented another reason why it was imperative we finish this fast. I wasn't certain what the negative effects of the power were, just that it was bad and I didn't want her to suffer them. Not while we were teammates anyway. My legs clinked back in place, and I stood up after some awkward maneuvering. "Focus on the spinal cord. I'll take care of the gorilla." The monster spat out a mixture of blood and black goo as my right arm, which it had stupidly swallowed, continued to wreak havoc inside it. It looked like it was trying to puke it out, but I grabbed on to something inside. Maybe the opening of its stomach. Gross when I think about it. My left arm still hung from the spike jutting out of its eye socket. I called for it with my mind. As it flew back to my elbow, it also pulled out the spike along with it, leaving a fountain of blood gushing from the gorilla monster's eye socket. Guttural wails of pain echoed in the room. The monster curled up on the floor, one hand clutching its stomach, its other covering its eyes. The monster's green hue was beginning to dim. The red color of the parasite was following suit. Props to Doms for her nice work. "We're not done yet, big guy." I concentrated on retrieving my right hand from inside its stomach. It shot out of the monster's screaming mouth, followed by a fresh wave of black goo. Finally, all my limbs were back in place. I ran to the gorilla monster's head and, with both hands holding the insect leg, stabbed its ear as deep as I could. Reach the brain. I encouraged the spike as if it was going to listen to me. The monster shrieked and tried to smash everything in its death throes. It caught me with a downward slap, flattening me on the ground once again. It tried to push itself upright and roared. "Seriously? You're still alive?" Then it suddenly turned limp and fell on me. Its massive body was like a concrete slab pinning me to the floor. "Get off me. Doms, help me. Is the parasite already dead?" "Right, forgot about that." "Not yet." She really didn't need me to tell her that because I could see the red outline of the parasite through the body of the monster as if I had X-ray vision. It was forming into tentacles, consuming the biomass of its host. I hoped Doms wouldn't get incapacitated or something stupid because I couldn't move the dead monster on my own. I'd be pinned here until the time limit of this phase, or even before that if some other monster asshole wound up finding Lizzie hiding with my human body in the janitor's closet and eat them both. While having this body was fun, I'd rather have super strength in times like these. Still, this was a fulfilling fight. Especially because I didn't use super strength to kill this big guy. Doms was prompt on her job. I could see from her green color interacting with the parasite's red. She cut off the tentacles as they were just forming. The red slowly faded. "There. It's dead," I told her. "I'll get you out of there," she said. After several seconds, one side of the monster corpse was lifted a few inches up, allowing me to scamper out from underneath it. Doms had found a piece of rebar from the wreckage of the destroyed ceiling and used it as a lever to free me. "Thanks for that." "Awesome teamwork once again," I said with an acknowledging nod. I noticed she had formed a crude bony blade with the armor on her arm. I guessed that was what she used to prune the tentacles of the parasite. "We should hurry back," she said. "Yes, the noise might have attracted other monsters." "And Lizzie?" "No, I don't mean that. You could probably still save the father of those 2 kids up there. Let me just absorb this monster to add to my armor, then we'll find the stairs going up." I grabbed her hand just before she could touch the dead monster. "There's no need for that now. Earlier, on our way to aid of the survivors upstairs, we discovered that Doms, when linked with the armor finger, could absorb monster corpses to build her armor instead of using her own, energy or something. Actually, I wasn't certain how the bone armor finger worked, except that the first guy I tested it on panicked when monsters were attacking him, subconsciously made his armor extremely thick, and ended up fainting. His armor then fell apart and he got eaten by the monsters. Perhaps absorbing dead bodies was the correct way of using the armor power. Doms did mention the sensation came to her when we passed the corpse of the insect monster where I got my spike weapon from. "Why not?" she said. "This corpse will be wasted." "I'm going to disconnect my power from you now," I said. "Hold on," she begun to say, but chunks of her armor started falling off and crumbling to dust. "You're a normal human," I said. "I haven't used this power on a normal human before. It's usually with fellow Adumbrae when we fight." "Oh, I guess I did use it once on an augmented human, but that's very different from your case." I was having fun making up a backstory for this face, or whole new body more like. "There's no telling what will happen if you're exposed to my power for long periods of time." I paused to examine her as the helmet covering her face fell apart. "You already don't look so good," I said, observing her skin pallor. "I'm fine," she said with a shrug. "You can heal me. Who knows when we'll find a free monster corpse this large without any other monster bothering us. If you increase your armor, you'll have a hard time jumping back up." I pointed up at the hole in the ceiling. "And yeah, I think going through here is our best bet. But you'll be too heavy to jump. If we take the stairs, we'll probably meet other monsters and we'll be forced to fight. It's a waste of time. Just give me more strength. My body will be able to take it. I don't want to be weak again." "You want strength to protect your daughter. I understand that. I really do. Don't forget I'm an Adumbrae," I said. I paused and looked at her in the eye to give weight to my words. She faltered and looked away, realizing what she was saying. Or I didn't mean it that way. Anyway, I don't want to use my powers, be it giving you strength or healing or whatever, if I really don't need to. It only delays gathering enough energy to use my power on myself. I will need it if we meet the Adumbrae responsible for all of this." I kicked the gorilla's head. "This guy is nothing compared to fighting an Adumbrae, especially one that has control of their mental faculties." A pat on the back to congratulate myself for concocting a believable reason on the fly why I couldn't continue giving her power instead of, saying that she might go out the same way as her husband. And I even sounded like an experienced fighter. "Yes, but. And I'd rather use my energy on healing the injured guy up there, who might be already dead because we're taking too long to get to them." She sighed in a resigned tone. "Yes, you're right. You're right. Just give me enough strength to jump up to the next floor. Throw me up first." I left behind my legs and arms so Doms, with minimal help from my strength finger, would have an easier time tossing me back to the 21st floor before leaping up herself. It was a simple matter of pulling my limbs back to their sockets. I let Doms take the lead in approaching the grieving kids because, it would be hard to, introduce myself to them. She was adamant not to lie to those kids about my true identity, since we'd be taking them in our group. The 2 kids, probably high schoolers, were named Paolo and Julie. And I was right that the bald guy was their dad. Unfortunately, they weren't so accepting of me. Especially when Doms tried to explain who, or rather what I was, to them. "You told us a Corbring was helping you. Paolo swung his broken electric guitar to shoo us away. His sister hugged their bleeding father behind him. You lied. An Adumbrae? You're working with it. Not it, Dom said sternly. And her name is Pino. The least you could do is call her by her name after she saved you. I also didn't mention anything about a Corbrain. Just that someone with powers was helping me. So, you just left out that it was a Adumbrae, he retorted. He turned to me, pointing his guitar in my direction. Isn't this the work of Adumbrae? Turning people into monsters. Is this your fault? Pow, Julie, his sister, said, pulling at his sleeves to get his attention. They did help us. This isn't my power, I said. But I do know the Adumbrae responsible for this. In fact, I'm here to stop them. Julie gasped. Pow, remember that vid I showed you earlier? What are you talking about? The video of that Adumbrae killing the other Adumbrae at Serenade? The one saving people. Maybe she's one of them. You're talking about the one with the red hoodie? I said. Julie nodded. I know her. I'm working with her to stop evil Adumbrae. It might be hard to believe, but I assure you, we're not all evil. I wouldn't have risked my life saving you otherwise. I still don't trust you. Paolo said. Then let us show you that Pino is trustworthy, Dom said, pushing his guitar away. She has a healing ability. She might be able to save your dad. Save? Whoa, there. Let's not give them false hope. I'll do the best that I can, I said. That is if you let me. The siblings looked at each other. Then they had a whispered discussion that turned into heated argument. I want to save Dad no matter what. Julie shouted down her brother's concerns. Dad's going to die soon. Paolo opened his mouth, thought better of what he was going to say, then shut up. He stepped back and put down his guitar. He glared at me. Don't do anything funny. I nodded, then approached the dying bald guy. His green color was very faint, almost turning gray. His head was on his daughter's lap. He was missing his left leg, bitten off by the gorilla monster. The kids wrapped the stump the best they could with bandages made of torn clothes, probably with the help of Dom's. The guy's left side was also heavily bleeding, half his shirt was already soaked in blood. Can you remove it? I said, pointing at what looked like the torn sleeves of Paolo's sweatshirt crumpled in a ball and held against the massive wound on their dad's flank. Okay, Julie said. She pulled it away as gently as she could. Dried blood made it hard to remove. I'm sorry, Dad, she said, tearing up while her father groaned as the scabs were torn off, sticking to the wad of cloth. Just bear with it. She showed me the large wound, then peeled away more of her father's ripped clothes to show the true extent of his injuries. Calling it a wound was an understatement. It was like he joined a weight loss program where the solution offered was cutting off parts of your belly. He was missing huge chunks of flesh down the side of his torso. Innards were showing. So, this was what the gorilla monster was eating? I was surprised this guy was still alive somehow. I knelt down beside them and quickly connected my healing finger. I wasn't going to allow this guy to die before I showed my powers. This does look bad. And I don't think I can regrow limbs. Just do what you can. Please. Surprisingly, it was Paolo who said that. I will. I started to transfer my energy through our link. I sensed their dad's feeble consciousness. It was slowly coming back. Very slowly. I made sure to keep my thoughts to myself so he wouldn't sense what I planned for him. Julie clapped her hands. It's working. The bleeding is stopping. Oh my God, it's working. She hugged her father's head. Dad, please don't leave us. What the? Paolo knelt beside me and held his father's hand. Yes. His wounds are really healing. Flesh was growing, covering the innards. The muscles knitted themselves together, skin crept over and covered them. It was slow, but it was working. No surprises there. Given my experience with Dom's husband, Caesar, I already knew my healing power was very powerful. With my strength finger, I pushed my best pal, Caesar, to mutate to an extent where he should just drop dead from the damage his body suffered. He certainly incurred more grievous injuries than this bald guy, but my healing power kept him going, and he took on wave after wave of monsters. The problem was the consequences of this healing power. I had a suspicion of what they were. I could save this guy. His body wouldn't exactly be normal if my hunch of the side effects of my healing power was correct, but I was sure he wouldn't care too much if he lived in the end. But saving him wasn't my intention. My first goal with this charade was to show I was a good guy to these kids. Now, on to my second goal. Poison. He's poisoned. I whispered. What did you say? Julie said. He's poisoned. I repeated with as much concern as I could muster with a metallic-sounding voice. Poisoned? Her brother said. You're saying Dad is poisoned? The monster earlier that attacked him, its bite has something. Some corrosive substance. I'm not sure what it is. It's inside your father's bloodstream and is destroying him from the inside. Oh my God, Julie put her hands to her mouth. Well, what's going on? Paolo said. He's already healing, isn't he? I'm doing my best to counter it. I placed my hands over their father's wounds as if doing that would make my healing better. Theatrics. But I did increase my healing power. By a whole lot. I was starting to feel him wake up. Look at his flesh. I'm healing it, but I let my words trail. It's falling off, Dom said. She squeezed in beside me. How? The flesh did heal at a rapid rate. However, his skin dried and broke just as fast. The surface of the exposed flesh was flaking, then breaking down. This happened to Caesar as well. I thought back then that he looked like a slow-cooked brisket with flesh falling off the bones. A mild form of that was happening to this guy. I continued pumping my power into him. All the progress I had healing him was getting undone. A light bulb lit up in my head. Could I use this power as a weapon? Anyway, my second goal was to check the consequences of using my healing power on the target's body. I guess I'm done with that. Let's finish with the last goal. Can you hear me? Am I dead? No. Not yet. The bald guy's eyelids moved a bit. It caused Julie to cry more. Her tears fell on his face that was twisted in agony. So much pain, whoever you are, please. I can't do this, I said with hesitation. He lost too much blood. And the poison, damn it. It's stopping my healing. Please, 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 Julie was crying her eyes out. Please save him. No. Dad. Don't leave us like Mom. Please help my kids, their father said in my head. He sent me memories of his family. I could tell these were the happy moments in his life. Was that his wife? Then there was a funeral. These two were very young when their mother died. Come on, dude, I don't care about this. I ignored his thoughts and forced them back. I told him, don't go yet. Say goodbye to your children. You can do it. His eyelids opened a bit. Dad. Paolo and Julie said at the same time. He's not going to stay for long, I said. I'm sorry, I can't save him. The most I can do is give you time to say goodbye. Pow, Jules, their dad said. Come closer. Julie. Paolo said. Record what Dad is going to say. His sister hastily took out her phone and held it against their father's mouth. Kids take care of each other. The dad soon-to-be dead guy droned on for a bit with cheesy, emotional shit I just couldn't relate to. Annoying. In times such as this, like in funerals for example, I usually shut off my brain because I couldn't understand it. If I didn't, I might unconsciously roll my eyes. However, I forced myself to listen to the bald guy's dying words just in case he said something like, "Don't trust this Adumbrae." But he didn't mention anything of the sort. I wasn't sure if he was even aware of what was going on, he just knew that he was dying. I steadily increased the flow of my power, and his body broke down more, a puddle of his blood formed around us. He ended his final message with, "I'm going to where Mom is now." And he closed his eyes. Paolo, who was trying to put on a strong face this entire time, finally crumbled and broke down. He hugged his dad, ignoring the blood painting his clothes, and said his goodbyes. The daughter bawled her eyes out. I hoped there was no monster nearby that would get attracted by the racket they were making. I stood up and moved back to give them space. Yeah, I'm not paid to deal with this. A minute or so of this emotional nonsense passed. The son turned to me, his face full of rage. "You said you know the Adumbrae responsible for this." I nodded. "And you're going to fight them?" "That's the plan, yes." "I'm going to join you," he said, his teeth gnashing in hatred, tears streaming down his face. "I'm going to kill them all. I'll do anything to kill them all." His eyes told me he meant everything he said. Anything. Good. And with that, my last goal was completed. I extended my hand to him. He accepted it. "Welcome to Team Errand." "There are monsters roaming near the stairs," Dom said in my head. Our link had extended quite a long way, and if there was nothing blocking us, it would stay connected. After fetching Lizzie and my human body, she also checked if there was danger in our path. I stayed behind with Paolo and Julie, who were tending to their father's body. Good thing we didn't encounter them. "Is Lizzie okay?" I was going to ask about my human body, but I figured I would appear more thoughtful if I asked about her daughter first. "Yes, she's fine. She said she heard them wander near her hiding spot, but they moved away. She's a good girl that listens when I tell her to stay very quiet." "And the sleeping prospective Corbring? Also with us?" If there are monsters by the stairs, that means we can't get to the elevator either. We could fight." "Fight? What was up with her being reckless?" "I'd rather not, for now." "We're doing Plan B," I said, referring to the convenient way left for us by the gorilla monster. Even if we were capable of fighting, it was best to avoid the monsters. "Let's see if there are monsters hanging out by the elevator door of the floor below us." "Doms?" Yes, you're right. We're on our way back to you now. Take care." I crossed my legs and leaned back on a comfy office swivel chair, waiting for them to return. Whenever I sat on one, I had the urge to spin it with my legs stretched out. I always did that with Dad's chair in his office when I was a kid. To distract myself, I tapped my metal foot on the floor, getting lulled by the rhythmic clinking, watching the two kids wipe as much blood off their father's corpse as they could using office documents. I guess calling them teens would be more fitting, but they were still just kids in my eyes. Paolo, the older sibling, was blonde, same as their mother based on the memory their father shared with me, but he had some hair accents. He sported a crazy haircut and wore a sweatshirt with the logo of a band that I had heard of in passing. His sleeves were torn off, the strips of cloth were used to bind their father's wound. They appeared to have recovered from the death of their father. At least Julie had stopped sobbing. She now had a determined, yet caring look on her face as she and her brother arranged the body of their father inside a cubicle to hide it. Then they pulled out the drawers of a tall filing cabinet, clearing out all its contents. Using the emptied filing cabinet, they carefully covered the dead body with it like an instant coffin. We obviously couldn't bring the corpse with us in our escape, so I suggested to Paolo and Julie they do this to hide their dad's corpse from monsters that might eat it. They could retrieve it later when the rescue came. That's me, just your super thoughtful, friendly Adumbrae. Too bad I couldn't save their dad. For one, I wouldn't be able to fully heal him. At some point, my healing power reverses itself or something. I wasn't sure exactly what was happening. Their injured father would just slow us down, and we were already dragging my human body around. At least, I saved his kids. He should be thankful for that. Then, there was the matter of making these kids trust me so they'd go with me and I'd have more puppets. Or just get them to my side. There was no need for actual trust. Take Doms for example. She was ready to do everything and accept help from anyone so long as she could get her daughter safely out of here, especially since she considered her husband already dead. She wasn't wrong about that. No trust between us required. I just needed to deliver on my promise to help her escape and she'd be on my side, no questions asked. Paolo and Julie would have a different mindset. Kids like these were taught in school that Adumbrae equals bad. That lesson was drilled into their heads. I was also taught that, and I believed it too. My experience with Adumbrae so far told me it was kinda true. Heck, I was an Adumbrae and I wouldn't trust myself if I was in their shoes. Which was why I had to do that little performance with their father to get them on my side, to make them have a reason to work with an Adumbrae besides escaping. My main target was Paolo because I was sure he would desire to avenge his father if he could. A guy thing maybe. I heard most of the augmented bid agents were people who wanted to take revenge on Adumbrae for one reason or another, and most of them were guys. If I had Paolo with me, his sister would be sure to follow him. Tada, and here we are now. The situation presented itself to me and I just took it. Another interesting thing I took from this encounter was the application of rule number 4. I wouldn't bother the world as long as it didn't bother me. Like, how would that apply to the bald dude? Was I bothering him without getting bothered first? This was simple. I could explain this away with my usual justification. I was just going about my business and, unfortunately for him, I ended up bumping into him. Just like if I bumped into someone during rush hour at the train station and knocked them down. That wasn't my fault, they were in my way, right? I wasn't out to specifically get them. On the flip side, I also wouldn't get angry if someone bumped me in the train during rush hour. That was fair. Stuff like that was unavoidable and part of daily life. Just because there was a life involved didn't make this any different from all the other instances I manipulated social situations to my advantage. I could have left it at that, but another thing popped in my head about rule number 4. The bald dude was inevitably going to die if I wasn't there. Viewing it from his perspective, there was nothing lost or gained with what I did to him. The end was still the same. The perfect application of rule number 4. Technically, the status quo wasn't preserved. The bald guy actually came out with a net positive when you think about it. I saved his children. If I wasn't here, these two would surely die, either by the hands of the gorilla monster or by some other creature crawling out there. In the end, I was actually doing good. I'm an actual hero. Kinda. I hadn't considered viewing rule number 4 this way before. Such logic could be extended to most people I'd encounter in this building. In all, a very interesting mental exercise. Those thoughts went through my mind while Paolo and Julie discussed what they were going to do with the dead body of the woman their dad tried to save. This woman wasn't their family or friend, they told me they didn't know her, but just ran into her. Their dad was a swell guy for trying to save someone he didn't know. Turns out, a majority of the human race was pretty decent. As a side note, a majority of the human race wouldn't include me in the pretty decent category. The siblings decided to hide what remained of her body under a table and covered it with the folders and papers from the filing cabinet encasing their dad. They really were dealing with the situation quite well. Kudos to them. I usually didn't like interacting with kids, but these two were okay. Paolo wiped his hands on his pants after they were done with their job. Jules, you still have no signal on your phone. No, or I would have already called for help. Whatever weird thing the Adumbrae did to block this entire building, it's still up. Keep your phone safe, K. Jules. Protect it. He picked up his guitar and put it over his shoulder. And I'll protect you. Her sister had a confused grin. Yes. I will. What's up with you? Don't be weird. That's the last words of Dad in your phone. If the internet was up, we could have uploaded it online so it'd be safe. Ah, you mean that? Yeah, don't worry. I'll keep it safe. They're back, I said as Doms appeared out of the corner carrying Lizzie while pushing the cart with my body. Before Doms left to get her daughter in my human body, I connected my armor, strength, and healing fingers to her. She didn't reform an entire armor because there was no corpse to use. Well, there were 2 corpses nearby, but I had a feeling my 2 new companions would object to such a suggestion and I wouldn't allow her to use too much of her own energy, or whatever the bone armor was using. As compromise, she made do with creating bladed gauntlets as weapons for her protection, the same as the ones she used during the gorilla monster fight. Thank God, they're safe, Julie said. And is that her daughter? Yep, I said. Her name is Lizzie. She wasn't wearing a blindfold now. She's really cute. I hope she's going to be okay with all these things happening to us. That mummy on the cart, Paolo said. She's the girl that the Adumbrae want. Hee, I do look like a mummy, all wrapped up in white blanket. I nodded. The prospective Corbring. I did give them a summary of the bullshit backstory I concocted to explain away my human body. To be fair, it wasn't complete bullshit as there would be some truth to it if it was really the 2MS behind all of this. If she's with us, then the Adumbrae that turned the residents into monsters would come to us, right? He said. Wouldn't that be dangerous? Julie said, worried. That's great. Paolo said. I can fight them. No. You're going to give me powers, Pino. Pow. Remember what Dad said. We're going to get out of here in one piece. Don't do dumb shit like fighting Adumbrae. I know what Dad said, he grumbled. Pino, I can get powers like Dom's, right? I can give you powers to fight, I said. I needed to change this conversation because this wasn't the time for it. But first, I said as I stood up and looked around for something we could use to get down the hole, help me gather these extension cords. These should be long enough to get them down. We stood at the lip of the hole, bent steel bars jutted out from the craggy edge. An uninviting pile of debris was below. Doms quickly braided the cords and wirings. We found it made them stronger, according to her turning them into a rope. She knew her way around knots, making me wonder again what her background was. Next, she tied it around the nearest concrete column, giving it a couple of tugs to make sure it was secure. The plan was to lower the siblings first so they could take care of Lizzie when we lowered her next, then the cart, and the last to go down would be Dom's. I could just jump down on my own. Looks like it's clear. Julie crouched at the edge, stuck her head down, and scouted for danger. Oh. The body of the monster is there. It's dead, I said. We made sure. No need to worry. Get away from the edge, Jules. You might fall down. Don't be such a fussy fart. Only now do you care about what I do. Hey. I do care about you. Who first? Dom said. Me, Paolo said. He tossed his electric guitar down the hole. I can catch Jules if the rope breaks because of her weight. Her sister had a perplexed look on her face. What do you mean? I'm not heavy. It's a joke, Jules. Not much of a joke now since I had to explain it. Oh, I see, his sister replied awkwardly. I could tell these siblings weren't really that close, but I could see Paolo exerting effort now. Was it because of the life and death situation we were in? Or was it because their father died? Doms tied the other end of the braided cords around Paolo's waist and slowly lowered him, using the column as sort of a pulley to control his descent. Lizzie held my hand as she waited for her turn. You weren't afraid when you were alone in the closet? I asked Lizzie. Nope. I was with sleeping lady. You said she's a co-corber. Corbring. She's going to be one. Yeah. Corbring. They're heroes. Mommy always tell me they keep us safe. That they do. Are they going to come here and save us? Well, I'm sure they'll come if they know what is happening here. Would Clive and Trepanner come to help us? They probably would. But how would they know? Wait. The thing Paolo said about uploading the recording of their dad's voice online returned to me. If only we could stream a video of what was going on here, it would eventually reach the Corbrings. They didn't even need to come here. Clive could spear them through the camera. If only we had a signal. All of us made it safely down. What the hell are you doing, pal? Called Julie. Her brother was beside the gorilla monster, his guitar held high. That won't change anything, Dom said. She bent down and patted Lizzie. Don't look at it, sweetie. I said you could take your blindfold off if you listen to me when I tell you to look away. Yes, Mommy. Lizzie turned around with a small hop. Paolo sighed and lowered his guitar. I know. I know it won't bring back Dad. But we can still use this corpse. Doms gave me a sidelong glance with a brow raised. How about it, Pino? I think I should use this now to make a full armor. We'll need it. Before that, I said, I want to see first what powers Paolo will get. You're finally giving me powers. He briefly looked at his sister before saying, I am.